Okay, let's call the regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee for the City of San Clemente, Wednesday, March 23rd, 2020 meeting to order. I'm going to just quickly have Adam, before we even do approval of the minutes, you had a request to accommodate staff, correct?
Yes, sir. Staff is requesting that items 2A and 2B be switched so that item 2B is the first architectural review of the meeting.
And does that make any problem for anybody? It should be pretty quick. Okay, very good. We have one set of minutes to approve, the minutes from February 23rd, 2022 meeting. Do we have any changes or a motion?
I was motion we approve it.
Okay, I will second it. So we have a motion by Commissioner Camp and a second by Commissioner Crandall. Commissioner Camp?
Aye.
Commissioner Crandall is also an aye, and we have one abstaining. Scott McCann will be abstaining from the vote, so the minutes are approved. We will be reversing the order of the two items A and B to accommodate David Carrillo's schedule. So David, you want to
thank
your presentation?
Good afternoon. Yeah, so before us we have the Casa Rosa triplex. We have the applicant Michael Luna with us today. This is actually a site that VRC has seen before, Commissioner Crandall. It is a challenging site due to an easement agreement that I'll explain in a bit, but it is in the residential medium zone architectural overlay district. You can see the project site being highlighted there. Surrounding uses, we have a commercial building to the north. We have Orange County Fire Authority station to the right, that would be the east. And then surrounding single and multifamily residential uses. So some background, there is an easement agreement between 129 Avenida Victoria, that's a lot that's highlighted in red, and 130 Avenida Rosa. So it's only one of the two lots that are in front of us today. That easement agreement allows 129 Victoria to access their rear parking spaces through 130. So this design that we have before us today is influenced by that agreement, and we're complying with that. Again, for parking purposes, there is no defined boundary for this easement. It's just they need to provide ingress and egress, and they are satisfying that. Through this whole process, staff and the applicant's team have been in touch with 129 Victoria property owners. They have been reviewing the plans and they are in support of this project. And we can have, if there are any questions on that, we can have Michael Luna speak to that. So the request is a cultural heritage permit. This is required because we have a new building within the architectural overlay district, and that's to ensure that we are compliant with design guidelines, mainly to ensure we have a building that's consistent with the Spanish colonial revival style. So that is a style of architecture that's being proposed here. It's a new two-story triplex with a total of 8 covered parking spaces, including 1 guest parking space. We'll have a street-facing 2-car garage that's facing Avenida Rosa, 2 enclosed 2-car garages off the driveway, and then 2 covered spaces in between those, along with rooftop decks. So here's the site plan. In the blue is the building footprint. We have the street-facing garage at the bottom. I highlight the driveway that'll provide access to that one, and then above that, at the top, we have the driveway that'll provide access to the 129 Victoria rear parking spaces, and then to the other, that would be 6 parking spaces for the unit, including the guest. I circled the trash containers there. That is an item that I covered in the staff report. Seems like now CR&R requires 3 trash containers per unit. Right now we have 3 containers in total, the entire project. So that'll be a revision that we'll have to see in the plan to accommodate what would that be, 6 more trash containers, and be in compliance with CRR standards. So here's the front elevation. Again, we see the typical Spanish colonial revival characteristics: the roof, the white stucco, wrought iron, detail in the front entries. Down here, Michael, Luna, right? Correct me. This is a fixed window, right there. Luna, you see this?
That's
right?
correct,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
fixed window, yep.
Yeah. I circled some rafter tails at the top. That is a recommendation that I'm including there. So if you look at the spacing, there may be a AutoCAD little oversight there, but just to make sure that we comply with the handle any design guidelines, I did note that to make sure the contractor's team is aware of our guideline that requires the spacing between each rafter tail to be 3 times the width of the rafter tail.
3 times the width or depth?
3 times the width. 3 times the width.
So that's, I'm just trying to get off base, but, so it's like a 3 by, and they have to have a 9-foot spacing, or 9-inch spacing on that.
Correct, yeah. That is
That's very, very intense, very
Yeah.
close together,
I thought it was
and,
depth. I just considered it a printing error. Because depth, if it's an 8, then it'd be 24 1/7.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, which is too dense, in my opinion. Which we can talk about, I guess, but.
another meeting. So yeah, that is, I mean, as of right now, that is the design guideline, and staff is asking to make a revision, but if there's desire to deviate from that, I mean, it's only a guideline.
We'll go with what the guidelines recommend. And,
Okay.
We need to
it is
confirm
just a
that.
guideline. We'll have to confirm that.
Yeah, okay.
That's
It
all.
it is a guideline, and I would recommend that the design review subcommittee look at the context of the rafter tails, and because that typically that is what Spanish colonial would require, but in Michael's design, it might make sense to do something different.
Yeah, if it looks proportionate.
Exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so,
Sorry to interrupt.
no, you're good. So now we have the east elevation here in front of us. Again, we see the style, the articulation, stuff that staff does support, the entire design of the building. I circled the chimneys just because the height for each chimney was not identified. So Luna, we will be asking for the height of each chimney to be provided. Chimneys are allowed to go beyond the allowed height by 2 feet. So we want to make sure that we're not exceeding that. Otherwise, the CDP would be required. Here's the left side, in the west elevation, where the 2 other units would have access from. And here's the rear. As far as landscaping, we do have a palette that has drought tolerant and native landscaping. We are in compliance with the code, which requires that setback areas that are visible from the street be landscaped, except for driveways or any entry walkways. We do see that the walkway and the driveways will have some decorative pavers as well. And I circled 3 trellises that are along the east property line wall. We have some concerns from the engineering division regarding those trellises and the ability of vehicles being able to back up from those parking spaces. So engineering is recommending or asking that those trellises be removed to allow them to back up without any trouble.
Trellis, but not the landscape.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah, because the trellis would be further away from the wall. Yeah. So in summary, these are the recommendations that the applicant provide height dimensions for the chimney, that we revisit the rafter tail treatment, remove the metal trellises on the east property line, and then that we revisit the trash container placement on site. And that concludes my presentation. And we do have Dr. Lynn again present. Any questions?
Very good, thank you. Let's have the presentation and then we'll ask questions. Michael, you're up, and if you could also respond to his recommendations.
Sure. Well, it has been a challenge, this site, given the easements, and so we think we've come up with a solution that respects our neighbor, gives them what they need, and gives us what we need. We have their access way. We dedicated a full 24 aisle width, 24 feet wide, which we need also to be able to access our parking as well. And so we kind of killed two birds at one time with it. We tried to create the front elevation to where it really felt very, single family-ish, residential look from the street. And introducing the single two-car garage there, I think, really helped with that, and the entrance to Unit A off the front, so that the intent was to try to make it feel more soft, less impactful. With regard to the project, is very much influenced by a project we did, another triplex, one street over on Victoria. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's kind of just directly over on the next street. And that project has been very well received. And we kind of set the tone for this project, allowing the influence of that other project to reflect into this one as well. As far as the trash is concerned, we've already made accommodations to move some of that into the garages. Rafter tails, I think we've gotten really hung up on the Spanish colonial revival standards, as opposed to what I'm more familiar with is the Ole Hansen style. The Ole Hansen style, which has been dictating our Spanish architecture in town for years and decades, for 100 years, didn't follow many of those guidelines that we now have today. The spacing, we can accommodate it, but we think it's a bit heavy. We don't think the weight of that aesthetic is really that important. As far as the chimneys are concerned, yeah, we're going to limit that to 2 feet and comply with the code. And the metal trellis, we can, hate to see it go, but it can go. We do want these vines to grow up that wall. There's other ways to do that, to attach vines to wall other than the metal trellis. So I'm fine with the recommendations. I hope you like the project. Here to answer any questions.
Okay, open for questions for staff or the applicant.
Yeah, can you explain the easement a little bit better? So it's accommodating the single lot on the other side. So that's why it flows right straight through.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been, you want to address it or?
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to go into the more of the history of it, but the agreement is between 129, that's the lot that's highlighted in red, and then between 130, right? So we're talking about 2 lots here at the project site. There is I forgot to mention, there is a lot merger being proposed as well to make it one site, but right now it's 129 and 130 that have their agreement, and it's for the benefit of 129 to access the rear parking spaces. They have parking spaces at the front and parking spaces at the rear. The only way they can access these is through 130. So that is, I forget when they went into that, maybe like late 1980s, Luna or something like that. May have it wrong. But it's been there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And again, their design is addressing that. The agreement does not define the location or size of that easement. It's just a matter of providing that access.
So it's not tied to this particular design. I mean, isn't that unusual that you would have an easement that's just...
When they do the lot merger, they could consider locating the easement strictly where they're showing it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's going to have to redo the boundaries and the...
Yeah, I think it's just an access easement. It's not a prescriptive easement. Like, it doesn't identify a particular area of the lot. And I would say from a staff's perspective, this is about as straightforward as easement access can be provided.
Okay.
But there may have been some other design considerations prior.
So it was an existing condition with that other lot that you need to accommodate.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That makes sense.
It was, the 129 was originally, well, not originally, but at the time the easement was drafted, 129 was owned by Jim Keisker. I don't know if anybody knows
Architect?
Jim Keisker. He owned that building and at 129, and he drafted the easement himself when he sold the property to make sure that the parking in the rear could have perpetual access to Rosa. So, but what's interesting is Keisker didn't spell out an easement. He didn't establish any metes and bounds of how wide it should be, where it should be located on the Rosa properties or anything. It just said, the language just said provide ingress and egress to the satisfaction of 129. So we went to work and started meeting with the owner of 120, the current owner of 129, and we worked out, and we showed them our design and so forth, and they said, wow, this is great, this accommodates us. And we have that in writing. We feel there's no reason to record a further easement or further define it. It's to their satisfaction now. I think it's more of a civil matter between the two owners, and it seems like everybody's happy. And so, whether or not it actually, anybody feels that it should be further recorded or further documentation to spell out this permanent easement is, could be considered as well. It just sounds like another step that maybe isn't necessary.
And then I don't think that's a design review issue, so.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Scott, you have any questions?
The covered parking, is that for guests?
Yeah, well, one of them. So with the 3 units, one, you see it here. I think the way it's designed, right, Luna, is that one of these two would be for guest parking?
The city requirement is to provide one guest parking. And so it was intended that one of those could be the guest parking. Now, whether or not in the draft of the CC&Rs, they decide to establish 2 visitors parking, I suppose they have that ability, as long as each garage has 2 dedicated spaces in them. I suppose they have that flexibility, but we meet the code requirement for parking for sure.
Okay, so you guys have, just consider that you have flexibility to do what you want with the other space.
I think so, as long as the city is in agreement with maybe dedicating 2 guest parking spaces. I'm not sure. Maybe one of the spaces has to be dedicated to one of the units in order to meet the code.
The code does say that a minimum each unit must have 2. I think after that, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong,
The city's not going to get into the
involved in it,
particular regulation of parking on site, as
It's
long
not
as that
gonna be
parking
enforced.
is accessible.
So each enclosed 2-car garage has direct access to each one of the units. So it makes sense to just give them a 2-car garage, and maybe one is dedicated space and the other is flex space between the 3 units. Yeah.
Okay. Regarding, so you mentioned, I heard a 24-foot wide drive aisle. Is that, each of the garage, those 2 side garages have 24 feet backing?
No,
Or do they have more than that?
they have more than that. They have 26, which is what the engineering division is comfortable with these days. They haven't formally adopted that policy, but the garages have 26 feet in back of them.
Is that to the trellis or that's without the trellis?
To the face, that's without the trellis, to the face of the existing wall and property line.
I mean, 24 means code, doesn't it?
24 certainly works for parking lots, but when you've got a 16-foot driveway, it's tough because you can't start cranking your wheels until you get the front end out the door.
If engineering was here and they're not, they would say they want 26. Yeah.
One solution, and I don't think he has it here, is you can go to an 18-foot door and give him a little more to swing, but
Yeah.
we can discuss that when we start discussion, but very good.
I have no other questions.
Oh, the question is, we are agreeing that 26 is adequate for backup space from the face of garage door. That will be something we'll be making a recommendation on. Any other questions?
What's the width of that landscape strip there at the driveway?
At the wall, the one circled in red, I think they're only about a foot.
And you got foundations for the wall there.
It's an existing wall, and we, built by the city, we think that the foundation is cantilevered and that the footing for that landscape wall is on the city-owned property, not on ours.
You think it is?
We think it is, until we dig and find
Yeah.
out, but we're confident that.
Do you have landscape materials defined on this?
Do we have them defined? Yeah, we have a full landscape plan that was submitted and reviewed by, I think Summers and Murphy referred that.
Any vines and all, and we had the same thing on, I don't even know if you remember, on the senior center. There's a planter along that parking lot that was right butted up to the wall of the senior center. And they were able to accommodate some landscaping in there, even though they were dealing with footings and gosh knows what.
That was the senior center?
Yeah. So what do you have there as far as landscape? Is that?
There's a landscape plan itself.
I'm sorry, I don't recall what
I
was.
guess it's just calling out the material, the palette.
Yeah. There should be a legend on the landscape plan that calls out what specific plant species it is.
I just have one sheet landscape plan. Okay.
11. That metal trellis is gone.
Yeah, that's one.
It's going to have to obviously be vines and ground cover, and there's a toe over for the car a little bit, since the pavement won't go all the way to the wall.
Yeah, I don't see the actual vine called out, at least not on this plan.
No, that's something we can make
And
sure
then
staff
you've got these containers
coordinates with Murphy.
on the other side. And the trees that you have in the front, looks like two of them, that could be any of these three, I assume.
Can I see that? Can I see that?
Oh, you can leave them upside down, come on.
Okay, I know the arbutus is in the center of the three trees.
Okay, that's a good choice.
The magnolia is to the right on facing, if you're facing the project from Rosa. And then the king palm is on the left side.
And it pretty much is depicted correctly on the rendering.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I don't know which of the, I don't know what it's called, it's got a key here. I think we're missing I think we're missing a sheet,
Yeah, that's okay.
maybe.
Yeah, I just don't see where it calls out the actual plant material.
Might be the, oh, that's, you know what, here it is. It's the star jasmine, espalier, which is in the vine.
Yeah, that's pretty bulletproof.
Yeah. Very fragrant.
So it's out of the concrete, that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, any other question at this point? Okay,
Is the
any,
planter wall, sorry, Bart.
right,
The planter wall, is that a plastered CMU?
Absolutely, to match
Okay.
the texture of the building itself with slight undulations in the stucco finish.
Okay. So what's the finish on the, I apologize if it's on the plan, but on the plaster? It's a
Smooth
trowel?
hand trowel with undulated hand texture finish. Did I say that right?
That, like, word for word.
Okay. Absolutely.
And the roof tiles?
Two-piece clay, authentic clay mission tile.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And that's full, does it have like a triple starter course or double starter course?
Yeah, it does, and it is called out on the details
Okay.
on D1.
and
Yes.
that is a standard condition of approval for
Yeah.
things in the architectural overlay district.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And what, he said they're clay tiles, are they single color or is it?
It's a single color.
Okay.
Mhm.
There's a
Is
color
that
board
on there?
here.
Is it in
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, there it is.
Oh, there it is. Okay. MCA, okay. And the windows are vinyl?
Oh, what did we call out? I think we went to a.
And there's a chart on the windows you can have, so that
Yeah, one of the
Dave
attachments.
included
Yeah.
in the plan.
Brown metal clad windows is what you have.
Yeah, that's what it is. Chestnut brown, in that sample right there,
So they're metal clad?
metal clad.
Okay.
And you'll see it in the body of the staff report, the chart that was attachment, and the one of the previous city planners did a
It's attachment 4.
chart on,
Page 13. Yeah, page 13 of item 2B.
yeah, that chart is the allowed materials.
Okay. Got any more questions?
Okay, the only, well, I'll wait for discussion on it. Does anyone from the public want to make any comment on this project? Okay, we will start our discussion. Wonderful job, Michael. I'm glad to see this going up in the area.
Thank you.
In the past, one thing that was always discussed is that back when Michael Kopp and Julia were design review board and all, was the gate structure and how it can comply with wall height and setback in that location. And I love the look. And if I were you, I'd fight for it, but I want you to be able to justify it to building and to planning that that meets the requirements.
Well, let me respond by saying this. There's been several occasions where I've introduced this feature, and it has turned out when it's actually built and completed,
Absolutely.
it just really softens the architecture so much. It just kind of really grounds the building. But every time that we've discussed it with staff and planning commission, particularly planning commission, planning commissioners have stated that they want to work with staff to find a way to allow these, to amend the code, or whatever it might take, that this really should be allowed to happen. And several times, I know, or a few times, planning commissioners have asked staff to study this and find a way to allow it. And with that, staff could.
The code does allow it now.
It does. So there
Yes.
was an amendment for that.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Glad to hear it. Okay.
Great, I didn't know that.
I don't have it memorized, but I know that you're allowed to have wing walls that go over 6 feet tall. And I think if it's in line with the front of the building, like you have it, then it can encroach into the setback. So from what I remember, this would meet those new standards.
Okay, so I think the recommendation will be for staff to confirm that, and on any recommendation we make, to just identify the code. I'm glad to hear that staff finally resolved that.
Yeah, that's great, that's great.
It's a good feature. Any other discussion?
I just a couple, I think the building's fantastic, you did a
Thank you.
great job.
Thank you.
I don't know who we talked to about the Raptor spacing issue. I think 3 times the width with the frequency on center would look really, really dense. That's a personal opinion. So I think it would look out of place. And then the other thing, and just as a personal recommendation, certainly not a condition, is if you and a neighbor are on board with the easement, I absolutely would redocument it and define it in a certain place, because that guy sells, then he, could potentially open up a can of worms for you. So I think it's in your best interest if the guy's willing, go ahead and document and define it.
I think it's a good suggestion.
Okay, any,
Yeah, I mean, I also like the project. I think he's a nice job. I mean, these guys know me well enough to know that, I don't want to nitpick, but there's a lot going on the elevations, and they're all acceptable solutions. Where you have, in some cases, you have the sill, which is that precast, or was on like the middle opening?
That'll be stucco.
Okay.
The sill itself, that detail, that sill will be all done in stucco.
Okay,
Stucco
but it's a
foam.
darker color? It's an accent color?
No, and I
guess it
apologize,
just
that might
reads
be a
that.
computer glitch. It's intended to be white, it's intended to be sculptural, to blend in with the stucco.
Okay. So you have the sill detail there, and then on the right, you've got the arched windows, 2 together. And then on the left, you have the lower left, you have the single arch, and then you've got the portal. I mean, I would simplify that elevation, and, in general, I think you have a lot going on in the building. And then if you go around to the front, again, I understand you've got these 2 corbels supporting that little overhang, the roof overhang in the front.
Yes, uh-huh.
And they appear to be sized about the same as the other corbels you have on the other side, which supports that overhang. But they feel really heavy to me on that front door for that one little element, just the roof element. And then once again, you have, if you go back to the front, there's just a lot of it. You've got the arch at the entry, which is, I think it would fit in there more nicely if you had more appropriate sized corbels. You've got a lot of different sort of cutouts in terms of the openings. On the right, you have that fixed, which has a sort of a partial arch, and then on the left, you have this, multiple cut. There's just a lot going on. I would like to see simplify the design. And I understand these houses with this style can be sort of whimsical, which is appropriate. So, and it's just going to be a suggestion. These guys might not agree with me. But generally, I think there's so much going on with the architecture that we could really help the design by simplifying, especially a lot of the openings. You've got the one condition on the right where there's the entire element sort of protrudes, which is also unique. I like all the pieces, all the, sort of elements, but I just think there's too many of them. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but other than that, I really like the design. I think it's very appropriate in terms of the scale and the proportion. Like the materials. Nice job.
would you like to respond to any of those comments?
Yeah,
or-
what we try to do, particularly in the downtown architectural control area, is not to try to do anything cookie cutter, not to create anything that seems repetitive in production housing like. The beauty of this architectural style is that it's a white canvas that we get to play with shapes on. That's the essence of this style. And it's fun, it's whimsical, these curves are sexy. It's what this style and what Ole Hansen did forever, is to play with these shapes, to play one shape against another. I've tried to, I think there's on top of that, because stucco is so sculptural, I think that what is unifying here is that we won't lose track of, that you can't lose track of, is the overall simplicity of the simple red roof, the simple white stucco, and the simple wrought iron details, and the simple doors and windows that all match. That's the unifying theme. I think that the stucco wants to be playful. Ultimately, I don't want it to be a sticking point. I've tried on the, like for example, on the sill on the upper arch window, that's the same sill that we have on the right side elevation. I think we also have it on the rear elevation. It's the same detail. There it is. Well, maybe that one is a little different. But the corbels supporting the cantilevers, we tried to keep those similar. I think the two in the middle, though, do seem a bit heavy. Looking at this on the big screen again, I think they're crowding the arch. I think that could be smaller, but I think those were intended to match very much so. A lot of the radiuses of the arches are the same width on many of the arch windows. But I think that the overall cohesiveness is with the materials, and I think stucco wants to play. I think that the shapes want to play.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, there's a lot of balance with the sort of the solids against the voids and some of the depth that you can read into the openings. A couple things bother me proportionally, but it's minor. I don't ever want to be a nitpicker. So, but just suggestions for you to think about. And,
Okay, sure.
This is just a recommendation committee anyway.
I understand.
So, and it could be considered certainly subjective.
But I'll give
I
that.
like the whimsical nature of using the different features, but on such a small project, it just seems like just a lot. But again, that's a minor thing.
I'll give that serious consideration.
Yeah, I agree with Steve on this. The one thing I don't want David him to lock in is the location of the rafters on his renderings. I think you need to go through, and there's some places where they just don't line up.
Okay.
Go to, say, the front.
In terms of some of the spacing, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
In other words, equally space them in the wall section.
Sure.
Even though
Yeah.
on another wall plane, they may not.
Yeah, they should be very consistent. And
Yeah.
if they're not, then they need to be.
But I think, all in all, you've done a great job as always. Are there things I do differently personally? Doesn't really matter.
Any day,
It's
call
just
me and say, hey, why don't
because
you consider
because
that?
I can certainly justify everything you've done. So I'm in support of this, and David, this is going to.
PC, Plan Commission.
I'd certainly love a confirmation on the side gate issue and document that. I think in general statements, you can, when the minutes are done of this meeting, comment on the simplification of items that he's certainly done justifiable and good job as always. And I love seeing
what's the garage
360-degree
door?
architecture.
What's the
This is
garage
great.
door material again?
Wood,
Okay. So it's painted?
stained wood.
Stained, okay.
And hopefully there'll be an HOA that they'll restain it every couple of years.
Yeah.
Scott, do you have any other comments?
No.
Okay, I think we're good to move it along with those comments. Great job as
To
always.
planning commission?
Yep.
No need to come back to this group?
Nope.
Super.
I mean, it's a tweak. The stuff I talk about is just tweaks, so
I'll take
if you want to
another pass.
incorporate that, that'd be great.
I'll be happy to
Yeah.
take another look at it and before it goes
In
to
the past,
planning commission.
when he's had that direction, he's come back with some good ideas. So look forward to that, and also have the landscape drawings
Yeah.
more complete
Yeah.
for
Detail.
planning commission.
I think we're missing.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Let's see. Close those, and that one.
Great, thank you so much for your review and comments. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Okay, we're gonna go back now to item A, and thank you, the applicant, for letting us put that one in front. David had a time constraint, and I'm sure all of you do too. So if any of you want to come up to the table, that'd be great. This is minor architectural permit, 21-228, 309, commercial facade improvements, and let's see. Chris, you going to be presenting this?
No,
Oh, I was going to say, I didn't expect you to be sitting, other than you've been going through the guidelines for this
Yeah,
district, so.
I'll be here as a resource if that comes up.
Okay, so Nancy Myth is the contract planner on this item, so.
It's nice to finally meet you, commissioners. I know I was supposed to present an item, but I couldn't do that, due to personal reasons, but it's nice to finally meet you. And today, I am going to present an item for 309 commercial. This item actually went to DRSC back in December, and so we're just revisiting it and addressing some of the recommendations that were provided in the previous meeting, so just as a refresher, here's the location. It's the address is 309 Cayo de los Molinos. The renovations or the modifications are going to be done on the exterior of an industrial building. It's in the West Pico Corridor specific plan, and that's the zoning. And here's how the existing building looks right now. This is a view from different angles from Cayo de los Molinos. Here's the site plan. It's west of Cayo de los Molinos and north of Rincon Court. So here's what was previously requested. You can see that this is the elevation facing Cayo de los Molinos. The paint scheme, the color scheme was more red and tan and browns. And based on recommendations, the applicant modified to use darker colors. So there's going to be corrugated metal. There's going to be a gray paint instead of the tan stucco, and then there's going to be some wood and black metal incorporated into the design. And here are the previous elevations. Again, it's more red and tan. And here are the modified elevations based on recommendations. At the bottom, you can see that there's one of the recommendations was to put a mural on one of the walls. I think it's the north-facing wall. And so the applicant has agreed to reserve that wall for a mural. We don't know what artwork yet, but it is reserved for it. And then one of the recommendations was to, a lot of the comments were regarding landscaping, and it was to add a few more landscaping, and then also we spoke closely with the applicant to incorporate city-approved trees. So this is what was requested before. There are some existing palm trees on the sidewalks. There aren't a lot of landscaping throughout the site, so the applicants are providing additional landscaping. So they're going to incorporate California native plants, city-approved trees. I think there were 3 different trees, and this is in conjunction with the specific plan update. Christopher discussed with the applicant what types of trees those were, and I think they are choosing to do the redbud, the western redbud. And it's pretty close. The color scheme is pretty close to what they requested before, so it's not going to change too much. And then they're also providing additional landscaping along Cayo de los Molinos. They are also removing the palm trees and enlarging the sidewalk on Redcon Point. So with that, staff does support the revised design, and we do suggest moving it forward to zoning administrator.
Okay, very good. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Yes.
You want to put some of those up on the
Yes, I have some
easels so we
additional
can...
views for you
take a
guys
look.
on the color elevations, and try to bring over the color boards.
Yeah,
You can probably put them up on the wall. If we need to
Gotcha.
step up and see them close, we will.
Yeah, we might have to.
All right. Regarding landscape, we have some closer looks that we could bring up to you. Do you want me to bring the?
If we just put it right here, would that be,
Yeah, it's fine.
they're pretty good boards, okay. Yeah, if you don't mind, or if staff doesn't mind, first of all, thank you, good job, and thanks, Chris, and we appreciate you coming back here. We did incorporate the comments from the December 15th meeting, and I would like to just talk about a couple of the architectural comments before we go on to the landscape, because we're here, we've got a couple of owner reps here along with us, and just not to get into the owner, but I think it's important to note that this particular gentleman is a resident of San Clemente, is one of the largest employers, has over the last 18 months purchased over $20 million worth of property in this particular corridor, in this particular area, with the vision to embrace the industrial chicness of the area, the arts, the surfboard making. It goes in line with the brewery. This is a passion project. This is very, very important to him to make it as authentic as possible. Some of the things that the comments that we had, we brought in a design architect from Newport Beach that is very familiar with the San Clemente area, and then we have a working architect that basically is working on the construction documents and that sort of thing. So along those lines, might just change some of these boards just to talk about that. Actually, not those. So in no particular order, the building itself, the corrugated metal is a very, very important element of this industrial chic portion of it, and we've looked at multiple materials, and the original material board that we submitted was this board right here that had, it demonstrated, this is the type of reclaimed timber that would go on the water tank, for example, and the strapping. The stucco, just for clarification, is it was more of a muted gray. I think this is a dove gray stucco. It's not painted, so it is the intrinsic color of the stucco that's going on there to begin with. What we are proposing is the sand finish that is on the building that was built in the early 50s. That's a sand finish correct right now. What the owner would like to see is something even a little bit rougher and a little bit more aged. But this is what was there to begin with. The metal that we had, and what we were demonstrating here, is we're not going to be putting on shiny galvanized metal. The metal that we had played with was a Core 10 product, raw steel, and through either muriatic acid or a vinegar wash, we would age it and rust it, and we've done it on wedding venues and on barns and this sort of thing. The problem with it is it's just solid rust. It's just absolute red, and it's great. You know, it has a drip factor. It has, when you rub it, that kind of factor. We worked with a company out of Montana that actually sent us these samples right here, which is a pre-finished, it's a painted material,
But again, we met with the owner's reps and the team on this. And while these pictures look really, really good, if you look at some of the buildings that have been done in like Telluride and in Colorado where they've used this, it looks good from afar. The authenticity of it is it's just painted. So we were instructed once again with another team meeting, we have got to find the real deal. We've got to find the real panels. And so if anybody goes on Pinterest or Instagram and this kind of thing, it's great. You see the bar that's got some corrugated metal that they picked up off of eBay or something like that. It's difficult to find companies that actually like reclaim timber, buy old wood and sell it for 4 times the cost. But we did find a company in South Dakota, and that company has been working with us at lightning speed. We just got the sample material yesterday.
Yep.
Yesterday, and it's been absolutely wonderful. This particular gentleman happens to own also property in South Dakota, so it's ironic how it came together. And it's a company called Dakota Tin, and what they do is they go and these are buildings that right now, these are fresh photographs that are being dismantled, and this material is circa 1940, 1950, and the aging of it was all galvanized, is just that. This is all the natural age material, and it would be a blend to simulate what we've got going here. So it sort of freezes this aging in time, because we can't mechanically do that. Through Core-10, it's going to be all rusted. So it's going to look more red, and that was the intent of the architects to begin with. But it does look red, like the planner had said. The painted material isn't authentic enough, and so we understand that even like on the roof here, when you use this, you've got the old holes that were in the original. All of it is structurally sound; it's not falling apart. So the roof would really be, it would have either torch down or asphalt, on there, and then it would be overlaid with this material. Same thing on any of the gable ends or any on the parapets, or the fencing is the fencing. That doesn't have the waterproofing issue. But the authenticity of this panel is so important to make sure that it was built back in 1950s. And so I wanted to point that out, because that's the color. That's the look that we're going for. We're not going for Core-10. We're not going for one solid color. We want it to look like that, and it's been a challenge to find somebody that can source this kind of material for this kind of square footage. And we've got that source, and we've got the right kind of material. So I didn't want to get too far off track, but I want it to be understood that was an important part of this. Same thing with the fencing. This is just a rolling gate, but the fencing that we propose around the property, it's the same material and then framed in tube steel, which will probably rust. Some of the other comments that were made last time, we talked about trying to incorporate some more of the wood. So all the fascia elements and the underside have been, it's going to be new timber, but it's going to be stained to match the age, so it'll have that same look. The trellis structure is all iron, and chances are it will rust and it will drip and it will add to the character. We didn't change really anything else on the windows. They're still the steel windows with the divided light. I think this elevation here shows the additional windows that actually exist on the building. They're just now brought up to the same color. These windows down here are actual steel casement windows that will remain in place and painted and reglazed. And then this is all new up here. I think that's it on the architectural end of things. And we did change the fencing out here. Before, this was tube steel up here, and one of the recommendations was to carry this look along here, and obviously comes peters out. This is a CMU wall that exists right now. It's painted, it has a lot of efflorescence. That will be addressed with like CoStar or one of these blindside waterproofing materials. Any kind of mural. We live in a town actually that is overloaded with murals, and that's been a good way to address blank walls. And I was talking to Chris about it, and I think it's worthy of a field trip if you ever make it down there. The murals are painted by artists, and then they're applied. they're not painted on the buildings. And I think that's a perfect application for this kind of situation where structurally, this is a fine wall. It just has that fluorescence. So if we can treat that, the mural that would go on there would be held off, by a half inch or something along those lines. But the owner is very much in favor. He's very much in favor of supporting the arts and that sort of thing. We can't tell you what it is, but this real estate would accommodate that. So I did want to make a point about this because we were super excited to find something that actually they can supply this kind of material. One other change that from the last time that we were here that I think is important to point out. On this elevation right here, these doors, these are like aircraft type doors. They hit it in the middle. It came over here, and when this building was built originally, it was built like this. And back in the day, the flood channel that runs along there was just a earthen swale, and there was an easement on the property that went from Rincon, and it went through the property, and it went actually down in this area. And I believe it was circa 1983 or 1986 that there was a flood in the area, and I think it was obstructions at the outfall of the earthen swale that backed up. I don't believe this area flooded in this area, but it did flood down by the coast. As such, I don't know if there was a grant or what have you, but the concrete flood channel, that was part of the byproduct of that, in improving that. That easement was no longer needed. It went away. The folks that had this, the janitorial supply folks, went ahead and an addition was created, and this is how the building is today. The remodel of this, though, is that we would like to take where this addition is, and again, this is more of a structural issue inside, is that this will be able to accommodate a motorhome. Strut is an important company in the Bay Area here, or the Orange County area here, that deals in the automotive industry. This is an area where we can drive in a vehicle or something like that. We need to be able to design the floor system to accommodate that weight. But as such, we want to be able to accommodate the head height. And so we took a door here that's 11 foot and we went up to 14 feet. You will not see this from the street. It doesn't impact anything, but it is a change. And what it did do is that the parapet, before the ceiling height was here, now the ceiling height is here. So the parapet went up to this point, and now it comes up to here. So it's not a real impactful change. It still meets all the height restrictions and that sort of thing. This door here isn't completely defined because of the way that the pivot system, it may not work. So we may end up having to go to more, it would match all of this like a can roll-up that has some kind of light slivers in it. But that would be the only change that we can address because we haven't gotten that far with the CDs. But I did want to, point that out. The electrical switchgear and that sort of thing that exists on the building right now is exterior of the building. It's in cabinets. We went ahead and designed an Sdg Electrical Room, so all that, equipment can be put inside, out of sight. So that's a cleanup in the area. You won't really see any of this because what we have right here is a sliding gate. It blocks all of this from the Los Molinos view, but I thought that was important to point out. So that's on the building side of it. On the landscape,
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I remember we talked about the vents before.
Yes.
Did you change those? Or there was a height issue, like we wanted the vents, but then it was going to kick you over the height. Did you guys resolve that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we did, so, let's see.
They did an evaluation of the purpose of those vents.
Correct.
Yeah. They are not mechanical, they are strictly
It's
a
more
bird deterrent, which is a stretch.
They're architectural enhancements.
Okay.
Okay,
so it got resolved.
We'll talk about
So
that.
the zoning ordinance provides for architectural projections above the height limit,
Okay.
and so that we confirm that it would be eligible for that.
Okay.
As long as it's not a mechanical
There's no
device.
mechanical element to it, no.
And again, we do have solar up there. We are trying to be as carbon neutral as possible. On the landscape plan, so not to rehash because staff did a good job on this is what we had. And what we did is we made some changes to this plan based on staff comments, or the board comments, I'm sorry, from the December 15th meeting. And then we turned those in on, I believe it was the 7th?
7th, yes.
Yeah, and then we had a phone meeting with these folks here and talked about some additional items that would like to be incorporated. So we had incorporated those in this option here, which is what was on the projector, the TV here, which included some additional trees and the vines and curb adjacent sidewalk here, curb adjacent sidewalk here, and an increased planter width here, and then about a 2 foot 10 inch planter here, of which 2 foot of this planter here and here is on the private property, but it's for, again, being able, it gives an opportunity to plant additional plantings to help screen the 8 foot tall corrugated fence that would be along these two frontages. When we originally had our meeting a long time ago with Stephanie, and then I believe with staff, that's how we started out with the first landscape plan. And when the property owner, or the current owner, looked at this, the trees, this was the one bone of contention where it's like, we would like to be able to have discussion on this. These trees that are on Rincon are mature palms. Do you have those pictures? We've cleaned them up to see what they would look like. We did talk with Chris as far as this is an area that we have to go back to the owner to talk about, because he's very passionate about keeping these trees until such time something is done on this portion of the property. There's three lots here, by the way. So, adjusting and doing another project here is not in the immediate future because we want to get this done. But then after that, we will be able to better scope what this is. The reason we would like to be able to do this fence here is to provide screening on all the RVs and that kind of stuff that's stored here. And right now it's a 6 foot chain link fence with the vinyl privacy slats. So it's not very attractive. And the wall that it sits on is not very attractive. And we realized that going to 8 foot throws us more into a discretionary type action, and so does the valuation of the remodel, because it's north of $50,000. But we understand that Los Molinos is going to have a master plan. I also believe that the plan right now isn't adopted, so we're a little confused on what we're doing. We've got a big project out in Harupa Valley where we had proposed something similar to this, and then Harupa Valley came back and said, well, for pedestrian safety, we want curb, gutter, landscape strip, and then sidewalk. But for pedestrian safety here, I think that one of the comments was to have a curb adjacent sidewalk. And that's fine if that's the route here. We would like the consideration of a hybrid between what we proposed originally and the way we've been directed, not only from staff, but also from the board, and to based on the meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago that generated this. And that hybrid is, again, removing the sidewalk that is along Los Molinos, making it curb adjacent as the city deems appropriate. We would add the same landscape strip like we had talked about, the same California natives. That landscape strip would continue along here, but we would like to leave these trees until at such time this is developed, because we don't know, is the driveway going to be here, is the driveway going to be there? We don't know what these improvements are going to be. And we also believe that because this is a remodel, the scoping of what we're doing here in the right-of-way is our fair share for a remodel of an existing building that we're not changing the footprint. And the impacts right now on Rincon, I mean, we've got a batch plant down there for concrete, we've got heavy motorhome repair, we've got heavy equipment, we've got semi-trucks, we've got that sort of thing. So I don't know if the addition of that sidewalk and those improvements at this point is worthy of removing all these mature trees that only help that area. The plan, and we certainly can do that, but putting the sidewalk there does make it more urbanized, but I'm not sure to what the benefit is. And when we go to do this project, we're going to have to be readdressing these frontage improvements at that time regardless. So the pictures that you see is what's on Rincon right now. That would be our ideal proposal that we would like for consideration.
So just to leave the palm tree
Yes.
and leave the parkway or whatever.
Yeah, well, the
No
fence.
new landscape at all.
Well, the fence would move back, and landscaping would go in between the ground cover that is proposed, and I forgot what that ground cover was.
Yeah, it's these shrubs, so that there is new landscape going in between the trees.
Yeah, so there would be new landscape in the parkway, in addition to another 2 foot of landscape on the inside of the property line. So the fence would come down that you see there, it would be moved back another couple of feet, it would be the corrugated metal fence that was in the rendering.
What's on here? Are you talking about the fence?
Yeah, it's like that, but it's with this metal
Yeah.
work here that goes all the way along here. Again, that is shielding, everything that's back here.
Do you know what the height of the fence is across the street at the other yard?
On the corner,
Yeah, the one with the mural on it.
yeah, I want to say that's like 14.
Well, there's a retaining wall up to slab, but I'm curious what it is about grade. Would it be 6 foot, 8 foot? Do we know?
Are you talking about that block wall with the mural on it?
Yeah.
That's taller than.
It seems
That one is-
comparable to what's proposed, 8 to 10 feet maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a guess. Yeah. Yeah. Some of this information is new to us. We didn't know that this was going to be proposed here, so staff's going to want to address.
Let me ask a general question real quick of staff. We're reviewing this for a minor architectural permit, and more and more and more is getting involved. And we're being asked as design review to make some exceptions to things that all we do is make recommendations. Are all these things like those trees and all something that staff, this is going to,
This is EA, isn't it?
Yeah, this
is all within the-
So
so.
if the conversation gets outside of the bounds of design review, I'll say something.
That's
Everything that they're discussing has a design aspect to it. Waiving any city requirements to
Yeah, that's not
replace
what we do.
sidewalk, that's not the case. However, if it is the case that that could be a possibility, we would want the design review subcommittee to weigh in on, is the landscaping that they're proposing better than what staff is recommending?
I mean, on those trees, we're being asked to not do something that may or may not be a city standard.
Right, so you said that the value of the project is under 50,000.
No. It's over 50,000.
Okay, so then,
Yeah, so we understand that.
so I'm going to say, most likely, and this is just from experience, it's going to be very difficult to get a hardship waiver to not provide the sidewalk as required by engineering. There's a process for it, and there's a possibility it could work out. If it does work out, we would like to know what would the design review subcommittee
So we're not commenting.
prefer, but
The
if
sidewalk.
it's going to be one or the other, then it's going to happen just because it's part of the city's code.
And then, so in our meeting, we had conveyed to the project team that if they want to keep these trees, which our public works department has concerns about, there would need to be a sidewalk without a hardship waiver on the inland side of those trees. Means they'd have to push the fence back, and they didn't want to do that. So
Yeah, that would put the fence on the private property, and Chris, I apologize about this, but what we were directed by staff and even by the board is the changes that we made were reflected in the plan, and we were told if we did not submit the plan by the 7th, then we would not be able to be on this hearing. And as such, it was 2 days later that it came back, well, what you submitted isn't really correct based on all the comments you received up to this point. So we are not here certainly to renegotiate anything other than we had 2 days later to say, well, what you submitted is really not right. And what we said before, even on the first meeting that we had with Stephanie, was that, hey, we're in support of keeping the trees. We like the trees. And what I'm not saying that we're trying to get out of any kind of improvements. It is a remodel, the owner, for a number of reasons, including liability reasons, doesn't want to put the public sidewalk onto the property. So if the trees have to go to build a sidewalk, so be it. The request is, can we be conditioned that these trees, these frontage improvements, would be at a future time when this part is developed? Because this may be a driveway here. I mean, that may be taken out to begin with, but the most beneficial part of it is that we maintain the mature trees that are there. This, obviously, this project is, we want it to be the best it
Yeah,
can be.
I want you to realize, we're here to work with you to make the project work. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
We're not trying to put extra burdens on you, but we want to make sure the project works, and we can make recommendations to staff to work with you on something like that. And if Public Works says, you know, we can't do that, so be it, regardless of what we say.
And I understand that, and I can appreciate
And,
that. And
As
as
well as, just if I can,
Sure.
the conditioning of the project, that would be something that is handled in the zoning administrator meeting. And that would just be based on all of the information presented to the zoning administrator. So staff will tell them what our concerns are with the trees or the sidewalk. You can describe your concerns with the design impacts or the desire to phase the construction of that part of the sidewalk, and then the zoning administrator would make that decision at this time, or at that time. In this situation, we just want to get, the design feedback, because I'll tell you, if staff has concerns about the maintenance of the palm trees and the design of the subcommittee, we don't really like the palm trees there either, it's going to start building a case that most likely the zoning administrator would be most
okay, and I
doing that.
absolutely, and I understand that. And we do a lot of discretionary planning all over the country, so I'm very acclimated with what you're saying. Is it incorrect for me to think that, does the city maintain these trees? Because I don't believe so. There isn't any maintenance on this, and the owner has been maintaining them.
There are street trees that the city does maintain. However, it's typically the first tree. Since they're all in a line, my assumption is that Public Works has identified one of them that they take care of, and then the rest of them are the responsibility.
How recent is this one?
That was taken back March of last year. Or around March, right?
And
The first thing we did was-
close to escrow on the property was about a year ago. Yeah, it was
And
obviously
the one thing you say, well, can we say we'll come back and do it? It would probably have to be on a date certain, rather
right.
than just a floating date that it may or may not occur.
Oh, yeah.
And
And
that's
that's
how
hard
they
to
guarantee to
yeah.
the city that it would happen and it would be within this window.
But we're not commenting on that anyway.
No, but we're giving our guidance that,
Well, see,
I
some
think
of
ours
ours
would
would
be-
guidance on the trees,
that's the guidance
Not
is
really on the
to
side.
change them and do them like
or even
the
the
city
location of the
requires.
Yeah, the design aspects of the project are fair game. As far as the procedural issues with conditioning the project, staff will help you with all of that so that your presentation to the zoning administrator includes what you would like, what your preference is.
Okay, yeah. And I do have a question on behalf of the owner, because he owns another 5 or 6 buildings in this area, and some of them are right down the road here, and they all have got this curb, gutter, landscape strip, and then sidewalk. Is it our understanding that all of that's going to go away, and all these trees that you see on Los Molinos, because this is important for the future planning and the future endeavor of what he would like to do, because I don't know if he wants to rebuild the infrastructure all the way down Los Molinos, because again, that industrial chic look is pretty much what we have right now. This building desperately needs, and it's a high profile location. So are all of those landscape strips and the sidewalk going to move to the street?
That's a great question, and I think probably with Mr. Wright's help, I think it's worth a discussion with the Public Works Department. you know, I completely understand the concern on that, but I can say that there's probably a case-by-case basis. I'm pretty sure that the city is going to have much less concern about palm trees right next to a red curb than they do to somewhere that a car is going to park and somebody's going to try to get out of. But let me just give you my card.
That'd be
Send me
great.
an email, and
Okay.
we'll facilitate that discussion.
I'd love that. Yeah, because it does impact a lot of things, and I know that pedestrian safety came up, and we've had this with Harupa Valley. They literally put us through the meat grinder on this, and they made us move all the sidewalks back. So
This will be a very good one for Chris
Yeah.
to review with the specific plan.
It's actually in my report and the next item. So I've already had
Kind of give a heads up on that. Steve was
You
not
guys are
able to
aware of
listen
this.
to your
Yeah.
presentation last week.
Well, the item I have next is more detailed on subjects like this. It's related to design guidelines. And I can already tell you, I've met with Public Works. What I've been told is that the city accommodated planter strips, and the city did not plant those trees in the public right away.
Wait a minute, that's
Well-
wrong.
Well, I
So
can tell
at
you
this
that the
point in
city
time,
just,
You know, no
there's
public comment.
there's additional information. What I want to do is just avoid doing this out of order. If you wouldn't mind, you can stick around for the next
Sure.
discussion,
Yeah,
and
okay.
Mr. Wright can go over all of that. If that's okay,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
would
no,
need to
focus.
our record is.
I was just
Focus on what
using
we're
some
looking
staff,
at.
Right.
getting staff input, even though he's not the staff planner on this.
yeah, I just want to note that the plan that is proposed now in your report is what staff supports with advice from Public Works. So we have consulted
Okay,
with
that's what we
Public
need to
Works,
know.
and that was the result of that,
Simple as that.
those meetings.
Understood. And question on that, because it sounded like what you were saying is going to the zoning administrator. Now, I know we have the approval on that, but we could still propose through the zoning administrator process this and try to approve it at that stage as well.
as a
correct?
future condition.
You always
You
have
can
that
propose
opportunity.
whatever you want,
Okay.
whether you get staff support on
Understood.
100% of it is a
Understood.
different story.
Yeah, because we want to make sure we're meeting the comments, but also want to make sure that we're not, by submitting that's the only option, because we do want to still make the case for this.
Yeah, you have that right, yeah.
Okay.
And staff
Okay.
will work with you to make sure that.
Okay.
Did you have any other?
No,
Okay.
other than that, I mean, everything's been going along just fine.
And we heard from the owners and whatnot last presentation. So I will close it for presentation, open for any public comment, if anybody wants to make a comment on it. We have two that want to make it quick. You'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm Gary Jackmini, and I own Ring Contract Center, which is on the same street and backs up to your property. And I've been in the area since the 60s. And I know how trees got there. I know on the Queen Palms that go around Los Molinos. I was on the Los Molinos business group years ago, and the city actually funded to put those Queen Palms along Los Molinos. Now, how all those got in a row right there, probably the owner
Yeah.
at that time planted them. And because I researched, because a lot of the guys, I've been in the city so long, I said, I was on the board then, but I wasn't as active as the other guys were. And they said that the city had money, a program, a grant or something, so they authorized, because it was oleanders were in those little strips, and they were dying, they looked like hell. So this business group got together. David Lund was the city then, and he got the program going, and that's how the trees, the Queen Palms got there. And that's one of our discussions, because Jared and we started Los Marinas group again, and we're trying to address all this with, because those little strips are, people get out of the car and they twist their arm or leg in them or whatever, and so we are trying to get a plan that would flow with your plan, and I have to say, the building's perfect. I think it's the best thing that could happen down there. It goes along with, the way that the brewery's doing it, and I like to see the area go that direction. And so, my hat's off to you guys.
We credit the owner here.
Yeah.
He's
Scott,
Big steward.
I'd like to meet, him, talk to his right-hand guy, and I'd like to, continue that rapport. I think
For
you
sure.
guys are on a good move. So.
Now I'd like to get your contact information too
Yeah.
for the future.
Sir, for the record, could you just state your name?
Gary Giacomini,
Could you spell that last name?
Giacom is in Mary, I-N-I.
And he spoke at the planning commission last week.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah, my name is Jared Bybee, B-Y-B-E-E. And between Gary and I, we're probably the most able to comment on this because Gary drives past it 100 times a day. I live on the hill behind it, so I look down on this, all the time. And I also own a business in the area, so Gary and I have kind of worked on this, the ringleaders of this business association. And I think like the plan looks fantastic. I think it's the original one looked good, and this one looks even better. So I'm really excited to see kind of all these things happening on this particular property. That's it. Just
Thank you very much. Okay, we will open it for discussion. Let's talk just about the building to start with and leave the site issues alone for a moment. I was lucky enough to be involved with the firm that did the cannery down in Newport Beach 40 years ago, or 45 years ago. And this is kind of how it worked. I'm comfortable with the materials. I think the intent is good. I don't know if I'm really crazy about the steel trellis function, but that's okay. That's just a personal preference. Because I don't know if it really will weather quite the same as the rest of it. But it's got that kind of Monterey cannery feel. The same thing you'll see in mining towns that are ski resorts now and all. It's a proven look, and I think it's eclectic compared to what we have been hearing about from Chris Wright on the intent and all of this zone. So the only thing I would say is, as far as design review goes, I'm comfortable with the roof vents, but I don't know if we can justify whether they're legal or not. We'll let staff's research and all on the code determine that, and they think it does. So
Yeah.
I will accept staff's approval on that personally.
Okay.
I'll let staff make that call. But I can support the project. I think the owners have given good direction to their team. Any other comments on the building alone?
I think they've done a great job. I think it's a big improvement. I appreciate all the effort you guys have gone through to, find great materials and the passion of the owner. So I think it's great. Regarding the sidewalk, I think you just need to work with Public Works.
That's no problem.
Okay, Steve, you got any?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I liked it before, and I think it's an improvement.
I
So you guys already incorporated a lot of the things that we talked about.
Yeah.
Color, I like the tone of the color a little bit better. I like the idea of the corrugated metal being truly patinate over time. I think that takes a lot of effort, so I commend you for that. I think it's okay to have a sort of more modern material with the trellis.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of a foil against the real kind of rustic quality of the corrugated metal. The guardrail, is that a mesh or is that?
Yeah, it's a heavy welded wire mesh, and that's, if there's recommendations on that, we just wanted something other than pickets.
I think it's an improvement. I do like the vents. I mean, I don't know if we can justify them. I think they add.
Well, I think architecturally they're okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, and one other question. So the base of this is kind of like a plinth of exposed concrete block.
Mhm.
and then it just transitions to plaster at one point.
Yes, it does.
How does that, is there some sort of a, reveal or something, or just at one course?
It just,
It just goes to plaster?
here we go, right here. It just transitions, and it'll be done with, shooter metal or some kind of, that there isn't like a belly band.
I don't think it
would
needs
go.
it. I was just curious.
Yeah, and actually, that's the way it is today. It's just that the way it is today,
But it's painted black,
that's right.
so it's gonna remain painted.
Yeah, but it's going to be repainted. And again, we have to address, there's no efflorescence. Actually, structurally, it's pretty bulletproof. The roof is atrocious. It's never been addressed in 50 some odd years, 60 years. This and the inside, because there's another wall that's retaining inside, you've got the same amount of efflorescence. And part of that is just natural. And the other part of it is the way the current rain gutters drain right now. It's just literally been hodgepodge. We're going to correct all that, blindside waterproof it, and then we'll address it. But honestly, some of that aging, some of that element, I know that some of the feedback we get from the owner is that while the stucco is the same stucco that is on the building right now, it's not old enough. In fact, put it
Make it older.
but in the terms of Scott, he said what he would like to do, you guys do the scratch, you do the brown, and then we're going to get a bunch of children out there to go ahead and put the finish on. And as silly as
I'm not
that
sure I like
sounds,
that
I think he just wants that aged look, and that's why he really has pushed hard. I don't like paint. I don't care how long it holds up. I don't like paint. And this stuff here, this company is fantastic. The stuff that they have, it's like we're so excited that we got something, because it is arguably the most important element on the entire
So the
thing.
black is gonna be repainted?
Yeah.
Same color as the plastic?
Yeah, it'll be, I don't know if you have one.
We have a steel
I
sample that we
think you
painted.
were saying it'll be a little grayer or something than what we see there.
Yeah. So that's the stuff. So it'll be along these hues.
Yeah.
But the differentiation is that you're going to see the joints. We're not plastering over the block.
Okay. So it'll just be a texture
Yeah.
change?
And you know what? I can appreciate your point because we did go back and forth on the timber. Right now it is wood. It literally is. There should be like some quarantine wire, up there right now to not walk on it because it's not structurally sound. We worked on a Panda Express project that had all the rafters, all the awnings, and all of the trellis work was all tube steel, and it actually did come out. I mean, amazing. And so I wish it could age like that, but
I think it's
it's
nice
sort of
to
a
have
maintenance issue.
Sort of a balance, old and new.
And really, in this neighborhood, something that looks like an add-on is not necessarily a bad thing
No, that's right. No, and
I
he
mean,
would
these have
completely
evolved.
support that.
over the years, so I'm fine with that. And I think this shows an older style than
Yeah.
Los Molinos really is. This is 1880s, maybe, something like that, or
I
maybe
can't
even
tell.
older
You'd
than that.
be a better judge of
If you're
that.
thinking of the
Yeah, I wasn't
Camrys, the old
around- I wasn't
Camrys
around
and whatnot, yeah.
And that,
Yeah, thanks a lot.
yeah.
But I think it's great. Scott, I didn't mean to.
No, I think it's great.
Okay, so I think building-wise,
Hurry up and get in place.
great, we're there. Site-wise, I think there's a lot that the staff needs to look at.
And I think we're
as far
close.
as-
I think we're close.
I
I'm
don't
just
think
trying
there's
to,
some-
yeah,
we can do, but
communicate.
other than, we're for doing what the guidelines and code says. Okay.
Well, I want to weigh in on it a little bit different than that. To the extent that the zoning administrator, they're doing a lot on the Los Molinos side, new sidewalk, nice landscape strip. So if I would be okay leaving the trees, but I know it's a public works call.
I think we're all in
I
agreement
actually,
with that.
I agree with that. I mean, I don't think they.
But, I think on the record, we're not making an exception at our level. We're saying we'd be comfortable with it if you guys make that exception. Or if staff.
Well, we hate to
Staff
see
can
the
reflect,
destruction of
staff can
mature,
reflect that.
mature trees like that. And they actually look pretty good.
Yeah,
You were suggesting that they're not maintained or whatever.
No, no, no.
Used to be, and I can
Oh,
actually.
okay.
I mean, if you
Yeah, when the
want-
owner bought it, the first thing he did was instruct his crew to go out there and strip the trees because all the fronds
It-
literally hung
almost,
down
yeah,
almost to
about
the
down
bottom.
there.
Yeah.
And that's why I was wondering who's maintaining it. Nobody was maintaining it.
The
So
owner.
the first thing he did, order of business, was to go out there and clean up the trees. And that's who he is as a person. And so we as a team have done a lot of work on this. It's his vision, and we truly want to embrace his vision. We've known him for a long time. He's a family, personal friend of myself, and I think I can speak for everyone here. But he is truly an amazing steward of not only this quote-unquote surf ghetto, but the arts and what is embraced there. The fact that you can keep folks there for a reduced rate so they can still practice their craft, and then we're not just going to come in here and make this the next Louis Vuitton store. It says a lot. It says a lot. And this guy is just, I will go to war for him because he truly wants what's best for the community.
Well, welcome to the community.
So the fence is going in along that other lot.
So I
Yeah.
think
Yes,
it can
yes.
go to, this will go to staff and then to GA.
Yes.
And if you feel anything has to come back, we'd be more than happy to expedite it.
I
If it
think this
happens.
was a great discussion, and we've got as much direction as we need at this point. Unless there's some substantial issues, I don't see this.
Look,
And I mean, if you come back with these on every single site, this quality, welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you. No, and we're a big fan too. We just want to make this the best. And as everybody knows, I think it's just horrifically expensive to construct anything
Oh, yeah.
nowadays, and so we just want to make sure that the burden that's being placed, the fence is to complete the picture. Down the line it'll be something else. So we're just trying to not encumber it so much to where we don't have to compromise something.
And I mean, this is, I don't want to say the entry into the district
it's an
from,
important-
No, yeah, it's a gateway.
but it's really the first thing you spot, and this will be great.
Yes.
And I know this was a surprise with the landscape option. Didn't mean it to be like a
Oh
ambulance
no,
type thing, but
yeah.
I do like having these conversations in person via over the phone, so we can kind of really show you, what we're trying to do and our vision. And those trees, like we've demonstrated, they are kind of, a passion project to save for this particular project. And so we're looking forward to working with the next step to keep that message going.
Yeah, I just note that staff really wanted to keep the project moving, and so we were really trying to work with the applicant to pull everything together before the meeting, and we recognized that we had comments, we were trying to sort them out. So I appreciate you working with us.
Sure.
There's new information that has come out since the start of this project because we're having meetings. I'm talking to the businesses down there, so thanks for trying to address it.
And like I said earlier, we're all here to work together to make it work.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
Appreciate
Okay.
Can we take the other material board back with us? Is that okay, or?
Sure, we'll need it for the planning commission meeting, but if you want to update it.
ZA.
ZA, if you want to update it for that meeting.
Yeah, 'cause this
that'd be
one
great.
is, this metal work is not, so we'll get it all dialed in for you and then bring it back up.
Sounds good.
So we will close the architectural reviews, go to new business, and we have basically two items. Los Molinos Design Guidelines, the standards, Chris Wright's going to present them, and this is pretty much the same thing we saw last week at commission level.
This is actually a little different, Commissioner Crandall.
But, I mean, same subject,
Same subject, it just,
but how it relates to us more than the commission.
yeah, so to sort this out, actually, let me,
Chris, did you get my images?
I did, I created a PowerPoint with them.
Okay.
Chris?
Do I need your help to open PowerPoint?
I think you have it open in your office. Because it says Christopher's working on
Just click, just X
it.
out.
Sit out.
And
And
then
then click
what's the
open. There you go.
Okay.
There we go.
Thank you. I kind of read it. Okay, so yes, we had this item is Los Molinos Guidelines and Standards. As Commissioner Crandall had mentioned, we had a study session on March 16th, the Planning Commission, where we introduced a project that is underway. It includes several amendments to planning documents, one of which is the West Pico Corridor Specific Plan. And the purpose of this meeting is to get some input on staff's approach to updating design guidelines within that specific plan. Those design guideline updates are an implementation, a general plan implementation measure. So that's what's on the right in this little graphic, is to update design guidelines in the West Pico Corridor Civic Plan to provide new design guidance on architecture and landscape. And that was something that the City Council had prioritized and we're trying to accomplish as part of this project. So since the project was initiated, we've had several discussions with Los Molinos Business Group. We've had 3 community meetings and then more meetings with the businesses specifically to get their input on what Los Molinos architecture is. And the outcome of those discussions is reflected in the report that we've prepared that gets into more detail than the study session, specific to design. So there's some topics that I'll cover. I'm going to try to keep this brief, and then we can go over your questions. So architectural style, materials, landscape, and parking are the main things I want to go over. First, Los Molinos is a focus area, and the general plan is one of 8 areas identified to have the most potential for change. And when you look at the general plan map, that's the red outlined area, what's defined as Los Molinos. However, the community really understands Los Molinos to be more of the purple shaded area, the industrial park. And in talking with the businesses, we've tried to narrow down what the Los Molinos architectural district should apply to. And that's what we've drafted is this purple area. There's only maybe some properties that staff isn't entirely sure about that I'd like your input on, really relating to residential lots. There's some multifamily residential lots here, and then there's a single family home here. And I'm sure that those properties could be developed also according to these design guidelines. But I'd like your take on it, whether we want to limit the architectural style to more of a industrial thematic district that truly is an industrial land use area, or just have it more of the Los Molinos boundary, right? You can see that it follows and includes those homes. So,
What's the zoning of those lots?
these lots here are residential medium density, and then there's a single family zoned property right here.
And those aren't intended at this point in time of being changed, or does this change them?
This would not change the land use.
Okay.
It's really a question of should we be requiring Los Molinos styled architecture for these residential uses?
This is a design guideline overlay
It's
on
design
existing
guidelines.
zone.
Yes.
Can you just refresh my memory? What different zones do we have in here?
Sure, I can have I have a bunch of maps. So this is the existing specific plan boundary, and the project includes a proposal to expand the specific plan to include the entirety of Los Molinos focus area and some other lots, and there's a map that shows that. So it include add these blue shaded parcels, a portion of Bonita Canyon Park, and then these industrial parcels. The red shaded area is Los Molinos focus area in the general plan. And then if you want to see what that means in terms of the land uses, you can see there's a home here that's part of the Los Molinos focus area in the general plan. And then there's these orange lots that are multifamily residential. All the purple here is industrial. So
What about the darker? Is that the same?
this is all industrial all along here.
It's heavy and light industrial, the purple being the heavier industrial.
Yeah.
So is it commercial use allowed in there? Or is it just?
Yes.
Okay.
So one question I'd like your input in, when the discussion part is whether we should limit the Los Molinos Architectural District to the industrial park or expand it all the way up to the boundary in the general plan for Los Molinos. I'm starting to lean towards just limiting it to industrial. I think it could go either way.
I might disagree with you.
Sure, that's why I'm here. I
But
want to get your input.
since we're just looking at a guideline overlay, in that guideline, it could state except for existing residential.
It could,
Would that
essentially,
make
that's
the
what
process
I'm,
of getting this approved any easier?
essentially, that's what I'm suggesting is right here. So this map is a map that I'm proposing to put in the specific plan, without the red. I would not have the red boundary in here. And all I would do is not have purple shaded parcels for that residential. And for those parcels, you would just follow the general design guidelines. Like the buildings can't be out of character with the neighborhood and, basic design guidelines, not like.
Basically, nothing that would really need a discretionary review.
Correct. Residential does not,
Well, sir, asking
most
for
of the time
exceptions.
doesn't require discretionary review.
Okay. That seems like a good approach.
What about the area at the very top of the screen, back in that corner behind, because that's really, I don't know about the uses. I mean, I know there's like there's electrical supply back there, and I think there's Ewing, and there's
Automotive, sprinkler company, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, but it's kind of an industrial look. I mean, it looks kind of similar to Los Molinos down there.
Yes,
Would you
so
consider like leaving that there and not calling it SCR?
no, because what I have here is consistent with the general plan. A lot of these uses up here are non-conforming. Actually, this is a part of Pico Plaza and Pico Corridor. So this is not a departure from what is in the specific plan now. It actually calls for more Spanish architecture here, and this is identified as a gateway where properties that adjoin the off-ramp or that are adjacent to that off-ramp are required to have Spanish colonial revival architecture. And then it says in Pico Plaza or Pico Corridor, which the current specific plan identifies to include these parcels, is supposed to have Spanish architecture or Spanish colonial revival architecture. So staff had considered, should we do Spanish or Spanish colonial? We decided with doing Spanish colonial so that there's consistency among the whole area. So I know that's a long answer, but that going in a direction away from Spanish is inconsistent with the general plan, staff's opinion.
Yeah, and just at this point, our direction is to make the specific plan consistent with the general plan.
Kind of.
Yes.
Okay.
And I totally understood that when you drive out in that area, it doesn't look Spanish at all, right? It looks like Los Molinos, right? So that was this map was a big focus at the start of this project. Where is Los Molinos? Because, and what types of architecture should be required? So I totally hear the comments.
Los Molinos is a nice enclave. It is a captured area where this is kind of outside.
So there's some policies in the general plan. I attached them all to the report, but really there's some main things that are emphasized: to have a range of materials, eclectic design. There's a statement defining Los Molinos is a special industrial district in the community that has a heritage of surf culture, arts and crafts, business incubation and industrial activity. In my experience working with different businesses down here, it's one of the most flexible areas of the city, what types of uses are accommodated. And so these were really big things that we kept trying to focus on, what these policies say. But when you get a sentence like, we encourage an eclectic mix of architectural styles, that's very broad. And so we've had a lot of discussions with businesses to try to understand what that means to them, because these policies came out of a lot of public input, and so we want to make sure that they reflect what we're hearing from the businesses. These are pictures from several of the businesses down there. And I'll summarize the best I can. We have two of the business owners here, but what staff had heard is that there is desire not to do a lot, not to change a lot, not to have a long list of design guidelines that are prescriptive, like Spanish colonial architecture. This area is different. We need to recognize that this is not Spanish Village by the Sea, Spanish colonial, and it has a unique heritage, and we want to maintain that heritage, but improve on it within that character, that heritage. So we propose a vision statement rather than requiring certain building forms and types of windows and colors, very detailed type of guidelines, so that when a project comes in, it conveys this vision for what Los Molinos design is. And you try to reflect the comments that we got from the businesses, but this is the first time that we put it to paper. And so we understand that we're gonna have further discussions with the businesses, and this is our first effort to get planning commission input on these ideas. So the first principle would be any project would be consistent with Los Molinos heritage. We did say it shouldn't be Spanish colonial, Spanish architecture, or other ornate classical architectural forms, because like Victorian architecture clearly would not fit Los Molinos. There was a comment earlier about that 309 project, about how this seems like it could be an older type of building form. That is exactly what the type of comments that we're getting, that it doesn't have to be current industrial architecture, just what fits within the umbrella of an industrial theme. So that project is a great example of implementing the vision statement that, and we try to keep it in mind with that project. So function, then design. It's an industrial park, so buildings are first going to be designed for the use, and then they can be accented with materials, usually raw materials. They can be distressed, like that 309 project, to give the feel of an industrial park. Purposeful detail, so industrial architecture a lot of times has less ornamentation, but we wanted to accommodate public art. That was something that we were told by businesses. Murals, mosaics, also features like windmills, cisterns, water tanks, things that convey it's an industrial thematic district. And then we do say that building equipment that doesn't add interest to the building should be screened. If it's like ugly piping or something,
Or also building equipment that creates noise.
Yes.
On the purposeful details, is that mandatory? Like, there's like a windmill on the brewery. I mean, these guys have a water tower. There's not, if they're gonna be details, they need to be purposeful, but we're not gonna require that they add them just for adding them's sake. Is that
correct? This is more of just vision, and we kept hearing we want flexibility with regard to materials and details that fit that theme. So we're trying to build that into this vision statement. So if someone wants to come in and do a windmill, and I've been told by a business owner when they did the brewery project, there was a lot of pushback at times of, is this really San Clemente? You know, because we're so used to Spanish architecture, and we want to make it really clear that this is a different area. So you can do things that you're not allowed to do in other parts of the city. Then with landscaping, wanted to accommodate vertical planting, so trellises, planter boxes, planter walls. You are required to have 10% lot area for landscaping if it's at the ground level, and it's 20% if it's multiple levels. But there's no credit that you can get for vertical planting. So we wanted to make this a little bit more flexible, especially considering that this is an industrial park, and having planting on walls could really soften some of these buildings. For plant selection, one of the things that we talked about with the businesses is how to distinguish Los Molinos, and California natives seem like a good way to do that. Most of the city, 60% of required landscape must be California natives. This would just say primarily your plants are California native. You can have alternative plant types that are drought tolerant if, say, natives are not well suited for a particular situation. And that is consistent with the Coastal Commission land use plan that we have, what type of policy we have. For trees, we identified new types of trees based on conversations with our maintenance and public works staff. So having western rosewood trees along as a primary street tree, and then the secondary tree would be little gem magnolia, and then the shade tree in parking lots would be holly oak trees. And so we consider things like right-of-way, maintenance, compatibility with public improvements, the amount of right-of-way, trying to encourage natives, so western rosewood are native trees. So we considered all these factors and came up with these ideas. Calle de los Molinos, I had mentioned this a little bit. We talked to Public Works, and they encourage curb adjacent sidewalk all the way throughout the business park. It's an industrial park, so you really need to make it functional for trucks to get in and out of these properties and have some flexibility on where trees are spaced. So this idea of having planter strip with trees that are 2 inches from the sidewalk is proven not to be successful. It's encroaching into the walkable space and has had some impact on the quality of sidewalk along Calle de los Molinos. So we are encouraged to essentially pull out those trees over time, have curb adjacent sidewalk. There would be 3.5 feet of public right-of-way for planting area to have California native shrubs and whatnot. And then when you do new development, you're supposed to have private landscaping on beyond that, and that's where you put the street trees there. So they would be on private property. I think that covers my presentation. Do you have any questions?
I'm sure we're going to here in a minute. Let's back up a slide or two to the vision for the other one, right there.
Okay.
I'd like to get some thought also from the public that's here on this one. It might also be because we've got the luxury of being involved in knowing what the vision is that we're trying to get. We got to be careful that we may have people on the design review board that don't have design experience because personnel changes. So we got to make sure maybe that we also state what it isn't.
Yeah, we talked about that with the businesses. At one point I said, should we have types of architecture that are not permitted? And so we put wording in here to say it's not Spanish, it's not supposed to have ornate classical styles that don't fit the industrial heritage. If you have other wording that you think we need to include, then we're open to it. But
Okay.
we found that a little bit of a challenge. We're trying to balance
It's definitely a
comments that
challenge.
we're getting from businesses is to provide flexibility, but then staff does have a concern that what we want to avoid is getting a project that clearly does not fit, and it's a waste of taxpayer dollars and everybody's time to battle with an applicant and tell them this does not fit this area. So,
Well, I was thinking that this isn't, I haven't had enough time to think it out, but it's not an area that, it's a master plan, specific plan for an area, but it shouldn't look like a master plan area. Sure. And we've got some talented people behind us who've seen it all over the country, whatnot. If you've got any comments, what would guide you on maybe some of these other sites to do something eclectic that may not match what you've done here, on the project you've got?
And I'll try to keep it under 3 hours. But I gotta tell you, first of all, San Clemente is so blessed to be able to have talent on the board, because that comment is so true, to be able to understand style. I mean, what if somebody came in and said they proposed a geodesic dome or something along those lines?
Or a Swiss chalet?
And we went through this, in the county of San Diego. I actually sat on a board that produced the first form-based code based on Seaside, Florida. And it was very, very difficult to come up with the answer. That is a huge challenge. Form-based code is based on walkability, pedestrian friendly.
We had discussions about Del Mar being done that way.
And
it didn't get traction, unfortunately.
Right. I love what you're putting together, and I think that this is endorsed. This is one of the reasons why this individual bought this area, in this area, because he thinks that the most potential here, the eclectic nature, the brewery, the surf industry, that those arts have got to be embraced and supported. How do you do that? I think if I was a developer coming into this area, it would be like, this is what we do on 110% of the projects. Hey, planning department, we're here, this is a project that we have. We would like to be able to build whatever widget factory. Do you have design guidelines? Do you have standards? And so that's the first thing. In an area like this, I think if there was an image board, an image book, these are the style of the eclectic, you're right. I don't know what to call that. I think cannery is a really, really good, close, comparison. But these are image styles that could be implemented in your project.
I like that.
What Bart is saying, I think, is, we need to say what we don't want, and that we want to avoid themes, right? Because that's what a lot of architecture is theming, which is also style. So style or theme, I think, is something we I don't think we can say you can't do it, but you have to avoid a particular theme or style. That's a way to convey that. And I totally agree with the image board idea, and I actually brought some images that hopefully we can look at.
And I got to say something else because I also like what's not. And that is a very difficult question to answer. But I think, and I'm just going to use our own project, I think that the rustic, corrugated, authentic, and whether it was core tent, because you could do that and that would look good too, but I don't think that the board would support vinyl fencing. And I think that that's something that we don't want. And it's so unauthentic. So there's probably elements and styles in this area that really needs to embrace the arts. One of the buildings he bought is where there's lots of iron sculptures and that sort of thing. And it's amazing what they've done with rebar as part of the architecture. So industrial chic, there's got to be made up names. What's that?
Coastal industrial is what you call it.
Our coastal, we've been making up names too. But I love the fact that if somebody at the planning said, well, look, you know what, we really don't know what the style is, but here is a good jumping off point, and we don't want it to look like the neighbors, but we want it to be some kind of, I love the fact that it's function, then design. That's what this building is. It's all based on function, but it wants to embrace industrial sheet. So
Yeah.
that's a difficult thing. But
I
I
just-
like that.
I just gotta say, like, I get the comment about the theme, and I thought about that a lot. I think just to keep in mind, the idea of industrial architecture, that when I researched it, is pretty broad. Okay, so it's not like Cape Cod where there's a list of very common character traits. So what I was trying to do is frame it around the heritage of the area. So it provides all this room in how you interpret that heritage. And then I really like the idea of adding a bunch of images for like good examples of how to implement that. I think you could do both.
And what, well, like anyone, you've got, do this, don't do this.
Exactly.
And I need
Something
I
with a
need
big slash
examples.
line through it.
I need examples of what not to do.
Staff doesn't like to pick out the don't do this pictures.
It would have to be in another city.
Far away.
Yeah, those are hard.
I'm not gonna go and pick someone's property
No,
in Los
understood.
Molinos.
No, but I think that would be very helpful because you're really trying to convey a flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could
No.
I make a comment?
No 2D fruity, but Rocky Road's okay.
Yeah.
Mark, you want to- Gary?
Yes.
I was gonna say, we need to get together and talk, because we want you come to our group, because we've been struggling. This is, and we kind of hear what you're saying, and I'm glad you guys are listening too, because when you say there's not very dense houses down there, when we walk down that street on Los Molinos, those used to be houses. That house across what used to be the Napa store was a house. So we have a lot of houses down there being converted to businesses. I mean, we've had, since the 50s, there's been a lot of mumble jumble, no oversight, and and so now we're trying to put a silver saddle on a donkey, you want to say, in a way, because we're trying to take this and make it look better, but keep it industrial. But I think we're almost kind of hitting on something that maybe, like you say, around over by the freeway, maybe this will take off and people go, hey, this is looking neat. We're going to invest here, like Scott's doing. You're going to draw people in, and I think it's to me, it's a win-win. We're getting, and even when you say we don't want Spanish, maybe there is a Spanish style you can move into and make it look industrial. And I think the word "very" is what we're looking for. We don't want all the same cookie cutter.
Very and eclectic.
And like you say, eclectic could be Spanish eclectic. It could be, whatever eclectic. I mean, where you have the taste, and I think the guys Rome that did the brewery. He has got an eye for everything and stuff. You go inside that brewery, you can see where his eyes are going. I wish we can collaborate.
Were you?
I mean, I'd like to
When
do.
you did that?
Yeah. So I think it's almost like a diamond in the rough there.
It's priceless.
Yeah, and people want to invest. I mean, I was telling, people, I get calls every day, can you rent me a place, or I want to get in it. And maybe you can take off in the plaza next to the freeway, who knows, I mean, if somebody drives down the freeway and sees, well, what's that going on down there? Maybe Spanish style isn't the answer,
Well,
Maybe
we'd
it's
be
certain-
taking a long step from the general plan.
Well, right,
That was
but
a
I'm just
huge
saying,
effort.
I'm just saying, start with this area. I mean, it's just a thought. I mean, it's just.
Sure, yeah.
I'm
Things
not.
And we do have this treasure of a little community,
So,
But you want us to be like classic industrial, right?
Yeah, I
Not
think-
modern industrial.
Yeah, I think like my thing with mentioning Spanish is like true forms of traditional Spanish colonial, like downtown. If you put that in this area, it's no different from the downtown. It shouldn't look the same.
Right.
So like that's the wording I was trying to get in there, like true. Maybe I could add that true form, a traditional something.
Maybe like.
Excuse me. So that's kind of what I was getting at. I don't think it's wrong to have Spanish flares or anything like that. It's just, it shouldn't look like downtown.
Right,
It should look different.
And back to the sidewalk thing, like you were talking about, some places maybe we don't need a sidewalk. I mean, we just need a curb. There's a sidewalk on another side street, some of those side streets like Cali Valley and stuff. I mean, people aren't walking down there, maybe one side needs it. Those are things that, like where your trees are at, nobody walks down it, and and I think a lot of things need to be addressed to clean stuff. Is some, there's people parking where they shouldn't be parking. We talked about that and how we address the parking. Maybe there's permit things or something. There's businesses that shouldn't be doing some of the things, and code enforcement should probably, step up the game a little bit. But I'm all about cleaning the area up. We don't want to look at weeded. You go down Los Colinos, you look at weeded 2-foot sections. It looks like it'd be better to have the sidewalk there, and then let the property owners do what they can to soften the look. But I like to get with,
Hey, Chris,
it's going.
how is this going to be implemented? It's just parcel by parcel as owners come to the table?
Yeah, so when new development or major remodels occur,
So
it's subject to discretionary review, just like in downtown. When you
Okay.
get a project like the one on, what was it, Victoria or Rosa?
Some of the conversations, though, answer that question. I think when a group, our business group, gets stronger and a little bit more, I did this once before during the general plan before that, and city was kind of doing some enforcement, and it kind of grew into, this whole thing. But I think once people down there see, it kind of like incentivize people to do clean up some of the stuff, like you're saying, And there was programs where you could get a sidewalk, the city paid for part of it. I think that's what, as a group, we should push that. Hey, your building's looking a little bad. How do you do that? I don't know for sure, but
No, that's a good mechanism, I think.
yeah, it's like
Do you mind if we look at some of those
Well,
images? I think it'll. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you?
I'll pull it up while I pull this up.
What I did is I just pulled some images from 3 different locations. So the 3 different spots, you're probably familiar. One of them is the Funk Zone in Santa Barbara, which, as you all probably know, was a dying industrial zone. And they wanted to activate it. This isn't one from there, but they want to activate it. And it's been hugely successful. And a lot of those buildings haven't been changed that much. And then the other one is a really, really bad area, the LA, they call it the LA Arts District.
Okay.
And they're doing the same thing. They're taking a lot of these industrial buildings. And yeah, the use is, I think, maybe a little more broad. There's some public park areas. So I think if the bigger that area is, the better in terms of being able to accomplish what we want here.
Okay.
But what I'd like to do is, and the last one, this one comes from a place just outside of Amsterdam. It's called NDSM or something like that. So it was a shipping yard. And it's kind of across the bay there. I don't know if any of you have been to Amsterdam, but it's an area that was completely ignored. And what they did is they started bringing in shipping containers and doing buildings, and then they enhanced a lot of the existing ones. So what I think would be helpful is, as we go through these, point out what we like or don't like, maybe. And this could be the start of some images that could be used, to define what we want to do there.
Yeah, from what I saw, I didn't see it. It all looked consistent with what I've been hearing in all my meetings.
And I spent some time and picked out specific images that I thought would generate some discussion.
Yeah.
But this one, for instance, this is like a building within a building. Okay. But the use of this material, I'm sure you guys love this. It's this corrugated steel that's been naturally weathered. But this was an old shipping, I guess, manufacturing building. And there's a lot of this done in San Francisco too. And we don't have anything of this scale, of course, in Molino, but the idea of these sort of open, expansive areas, and then these individual components, kind of on that site to create that kind of a feel of a town. Because right now it's so small.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be hard to really accomplish, that sort of an overall village feel, that we want. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind, because this is passionate to my heart. It has nothing to do with our project, but I served many, many years on the form-based committee for County of San Diego, and I gotta tell you, one of the things that was a negative that came as a result. If you go, for example, in Ramona, which is San Diego County, it's right next door to the second most affluent community per capita, which is Poway in San Diego County. General Atomics, they're all based there. There's a lot of affluency, and it's trickled up into Ramona. Form-based code comes into compliance, and then I don't know what the thresholds here, and I don't know what they are, but what we found in the old, it's divided up into 3 districts: the Colonnade, the Paseo District, stroll through, and then the Old Town, which is literally 150 plus years old. For wagons, there's really no parking. But as the conditions were put together, and some individual that's been there for a long time, that has a successful business, wants to remodel their business. What is very frustrating for me, and we've got a meeting on the 31st for this very subject, is that, well, wait a minute, you're going to do this. We want you to come into compliance with all aspects of the form-based code and landscaping and off-site improvements. And what happens is, what we have discovered is that that's what we started with. I wish it was that. But that image and the fantasy slowly deteriorates, because it's like, well, now you're going through the site plan review and you're going to be conditioned upon this, and this. And oh, by the way, the impact fees, and what happens is that becomes the victim. The architecture starts to go away because we have to, provide this much more landscaping, we have to provide this much more parking, we have to provide this much more off-site improvements, we have to redo everything. Our main street happens to be under the jurisdiction of Caltrans. Now it's got to comply to Caltrans. And all of a sudden, you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars that were taken away with, I just wanted to buy the building to make it look like that. Mm-hmm. I think that we've got to be very sensitive to those deltas.
I got to concur with that, even talking to the owners of the brewery. 2 years they've been building that brewery. And they've been gotten so many different, from staff and planning, which way to go. And like you said, they don't have a good palette to go. They don't have a good, they can't tell the owner how to do it. And it becomes this push and push and back and forth. 2 years later, he's still trying to build a building. Move this planner, do this, and do that. Yeah, it's almost bankruptcy because of what you're talking about.
Well, design is so important.
Yes.
And the vision, and I know this is about design, I think that's so important. I'm just saying, in the grand scheme of things, if some out-of-towner comes in and says, hey, I'm going to buy 123 Los Molinos, and I'm going to do this, they start with that, and then, at least speaking for the County of San Diego, oftentimes by the time they get through the system, that becomes completely compromised because we ADA'd everything and we did all this. And I understand that's important, but it's also important to understand that we're trying to achieve that too.
Yeah,
so it's a balance.
So the landscaping per se might not fit everything down there. You're going to have to say, okay, you don't have any land for, maybe you have to put.
Well, in our case, the form-based code requires not a maximum setback, not a minimum setback, a maximum setback. So it used to be, you've got to be minimum 15 feet back, we need this much landscaping, and then they changed it to a maximum, you've got to be on the street. So I just, in the master planning of Los Molinos, I look at some of the buildings, and some of the buildings that were on the picture there happen to belong to Scott. Some of those are actual buildings, and if it's to come into compliance, we're going to have to do this. It's just, no, we'll just leave the building.
Well, that's why I want to expedite this a little bit. We're dragging on. We are trying to come up with a design image at this point. Right now, do we look at this as a pedestrian zone? No, because most of it is industrial. It's not pedestrian type retail. So do you put sidewalks everywhere? That's something that needs to be determined at some point in the future probably. Or you provide the sidewalk and accommodate any kind of use.
I think we should maybe just quickly go through these.
I think character-wise, I think we have an idea of what we want to look for. And we will go through them. But I'll say like on the brewery, it got through in 2 meetings through design review and commission. It's been the legal aspects of grading, parking, That's not something we're involved in at this point.
And I think that goes
Especially
back
at
to
this
what he-
body.
I think that's what he's kind of saying, is once it left the table from you guys, then the problems kind of start going.
Reality is a
Yeah,
bitch.
and
Yeah.
could I make one suggestion? And I'll shut up. I'd like to get with yourself, you mind, and try to, maybe with some of your planners, and let's sit down and bring more back to the table, so it does, we're not guessing as much. What you think might work and what we could think, is that a thought? Just to say, you know, he's got it close, I think, and I mean, you know, Chris has been working his ass off trying to
Oh,
get
yeah,
something.
he's looking for guidance, not solution right at the moment.
And I
So
don't know.
Chris,
Chris, what do you?
Go ahead.
I gotta push back on that because
Okay.
I think that, well, I mean, part of the reason why we're having this meeting is to get input, and you know, like I'm the project manager, so I'm trying to get everybody's input. But in the end, you know, this has to go to the planning commission and the city council, and then ultimately the coastal commission. Okay, so, but the intent behind the meeting today was not to have everything done, right? That this is just to start a discussion. Are we on the right track? Like already I'm hearing comments that are really helpful, like putting the pictures in there. I think that's a great idea. Like, because I got to tell you, like, what I kept hearing in all our meetings was we don't want a form-based code, very prescriptive, detailed list of things. This is about as flexible as you can make it. It is a vision statement, okay? So by adding pictures, then it really helps to, I think, do much more than words can do. Unless you were to do a full list of everything. You either need to do a very full list of things, or maybe have pictures to represent what this actually means if you were to carry out that vision. So I would love to go through these pictures, and then if anything, what I would really like to do as the community is get pictures. You know, whatever pictures you guys think represents Los Molinos, let's put that in there. But I'm of the opinion that, you know, I'm biased. I wrote the vision statement. I think it's probably pretty close. So if there are changes to it, then I want to hear that too.
And I think
but
that those
we need to
images,
scrap it. That's
yeah, the images should have a small statement
yeah,
that says something like,
what is good about it?
you know, recommended,
yeah.
you know, vertical landscape, or, you know, whatever it is that we look at. In this case, it would be an expanse of glass if possible, and the weathered, you know, true weathered materials. You know,
Let's
that
go
kind of
ahead and have you go,
All right.
you went to the trouble of putting together some pictures, so go ahead and
stuff. All right, you can go on.
Okay,
flip through what you got.
Unless you guys
All right,
have
there you go.
any comment.
Mm-hmm.
so NDSM.
That's the
They
name of
only
it.
have that scale to work with.
Yeah, we don't have that scale, but that's because I forgot the name of that place. It's NDSM. If any of you guys ever have a chance to go to Amsterdam and cross the bay there, that's the place. But again, the thing with this is it's sort of a composition of old materials, right?
Mhm.
And some of it is exposed. You've got exposed seismic bracing. You've got a big rolling door. And there's a lot of things. There's some brick, but it works as a composition.
And you also have graffiti, like murals that they've intentionally left there.
Yeah, they encourage graffiti actually at this location, which is that's a stretch. But,
Yeah, I mean, Jared, you had comments on murals that he's been wanting to share.
Yeah, just
That is a big part of this. I've heard a lot about
Well,
murals.
we can't make any comment on what the content is of the mural.
Yeah,
Whether it's appropriate or not, we can comment, but not on the content.
it's more about the extent of murals. Like
Yes.
our standards limit it to one building facade, and what I had explained, there's some encouragement to allow for more murals in some cases, and so I think the focus is on that standard. Like, you know, how many murals can you have, and how
And it can't be a sign.
correct.
yeah, and I don't necessarily think that the mural has to be applied. I mean, what you
Yeah.
can see, and you'll see in some of these images, you can do a mural on a brick wall,
Mm-hmm.
on a block wall, on a wood fence. That can all work.
And weathering is part of Los Molinos.
Right.
You can go to the next one. this is just a thought. I mean, everybody's, it's a buzzword, sustainability. If you can incorporate, in this case, you can see there's solar panels, there's breezeway to grab natural ventilation. There's this atrium space. So I think that's something that we could certainly encourage.
Sure.
It doesn't have, and again, you can see the eclectic nature of this image. And I just pulled this up. That was that same project.
Just something I'm already noticing is varied. So I put in the vision statement, raw materials. It could have distress finish and whatever. But also what I'm seeing is varied textures. So like the last picture, you had the painted surface. I don't even know what, just flat, right? And then you have the corrugated metal, and you have it's broken up with the vertical lines and the horizontal lines and all that.
Yeah.
Right.
Expression of the function and the structure. Okay, next one. And again, this is something, I think it's drawing people in. I understand it's industrial, right?
Yeah.
But the composition of the buildings, in this case, I think it was a restaurant or something, so it does actually draw you in, but it's the variety. And I think somebody mentioned, it doesn't have to be a typical 4-foot or 8-foot sidewalk or, the walkways or whatever. But even the landscape, you can, it can be a little messy, if it's green. This one's maybe a bit of a stretch for Molino, but then there's these different levels and different layers to the architecture that we like to encourage if possible. Okay,
The next one.
this is actually up in LA. And I think this is good use of sort of like super graphics. It didn't cost a lot of money to do this, but it's a composition, which I think could work. And this was, an old industrial building, and I think it's now an art gallery or something.
And it totally changes the feel of an otherwise drab, ugly building.
Right.
Yeah.
And it fits. And again, if you guys don't agree.
Safety compliant.
No, that's a good one.
Okay, go ahead. Again, it's an industrial area, but even the furniture, everything you see has sort of an industrial character. And this planter, which it's a place for people to sit, maybe you're waiting for your car to get finished,
Introduced into the park area over there in Los Angeles.
Yeah. So you don't need a street trees. One featured specimen can make a big difference. So maybe that's the statement on that one.
Yeah, so one idea that we had is there may be instances where it might not make sense to have the one tree per 25 feet on a property. And if that's the case, then that tree would still be required, but it could be planted on public property, like at the park or, and other places. So that's an idea that we were looking at. Yeah. Just so that the focus again is on the function of the area first. Right?
Yeah, this is just paint, pretty much, right?
Wow.
I think the building, they didn't do much with it,
Wow.
but just get some pop, some contrast between, and in this case, it is a sign, so that would
No
obviously.
landscaping.
There might be a little bit of edge or whatever at the base.
But I like your idea, if you can't get it horizontal, put it vertical up a wall and then the square footage equal to what it would be on the ground.
Yeah.
I think that's a great approach.
I mean,
And the
you
sign,
have a lot
I like,
of blank walls. I mean, you could just put a trellis.
well, I like the sign is that scan.
You know what's so funny? If I listened to it, 20 years ago, down in Los Colinas, or 15 years ago, the city was going down, guys were painting buildings different colors, like rainbow, and those guys were making statements down there. And they were going ballistic. And now it's become...
Yeah, I think it can be too cartoony
Yeah.
if there's colors. Like this is not a lot of color, but it gives you a lot of pop.
But I'm saying that the things have changed.
Yeah.
And I think...
So you may
If I
want to
could-
put a multicolored building and say,
Well, if I can,
don't do this.
well, if I can share,
Yeah.
so I think the vision statement that Chris wrote is really interesting because I think we need less guidance for people coming to do their buildings and more guidance for you or whoever sits in your chairs to give stamps of approval and give thumbs up, right? Because it's going to be very tempting to just like with some of those, the first plan on Rosa, there's opinion on Spanish Colonial Revival. There's like opinions on the size of the little the
Oh,
radius.
yeah, no, that's what we're trying to get away from.
And so right here, what we
The
need
idea with
is
this
the
is-
ability for people to come and present a project.
You didn't have to do anything, really,
Right.
except
right.
paint it, and it's nicely done.
But if you wanted to do a completely striped building or a rainbow building, I think there's room for that as well. Because so a building owner or a property owner who has a creative vision and wants to do something that is aesthetically out there, I think if any place, it should be in Los Molinos. It's the place to be a little bit more rough around the edges, let your hair down. And
Let's go to the next.
the
yeah,
whole
let's
point
go.
of eclectic is you're not going to like everything. Everyone's not going to agree on everything eclectic.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about this one, other than sort of the solids and the voids, creating a layer at the street, so it's not just a building that's right on the edge. And then, of course, trying to work in landscape where you can. You can go to the next one. Same thing here. It's just a little cutout, which I think is like a little employee courtyard space. But it's very inviting and still very industrial. Just put some, containers with some, nice bulletproof landscaping, an umbrella, and then everything else is just the building. Right. And this is actually a piece of art. This is at that Arts District up in LA, but it also has a function of providing shade, for people to kind of hang out. Go ahead. I think this is up in the funk zone. And that's but you can see, they just put containers, not a lot of landscape, but there's a really cool, looks like a ficus tree, and then they put some planters up on the corrugated metal. And it's actually called something penny, so they used those tiles that are copper penny. Yeah, copper penny.
The roof is the corrugated.
They did that.
Same, which is a mechanical screen.
Yeah.
So the fascia, that looks like copper? Is that
It
copper?
looks like a copper rain gutter.
It's
Oh yeah, up on the gutter. Uh-huh.
it's like patina on it.
Yeah.
You got a lot going on there. You've got the pennies, you have the wood, around the openings, which look like they're steel sash.
I love the lights too.
Yeah, the gooseneck fixtures, the corrugated metal, but it still works as a composition. Okay, go ahead. In this case, there's a roof, and I don't know if that's something that we can consider.
Sure.
It might be a nice opportunity.
As long as it's under
Sure.
the height limit
Yeah.
and they have parking for it. That's one of the biggest problems we've got down there.
So this
Having
is
a restaurant that
I don't
takes
know
too
if
many, we
mixed
just
use-
don't have parking.
Is mixed use allowed?
Not in
Not-
Los Molinos.
Yeah, not
Just
residential.
outside of it.
But it looks like a lighthouse. I mean, it has a little piece on the top. Okay, go ahead. And it looks like
Is that Oceanside?
that's in Santa Barbara, in the funk zone. Okay, this is residential. That's the reason I put that in there. I think I would like to see, the residential remain a part of that, because I think it's getting too small.
Yeah.
If you take that out,
Yeah.
and I think if you just make a suggestion, well, it's clean, but it still fits.
Yeah.
And this is a duplex up in the funk zone, which
Yeah.
does have residential.
So the original idea behind that map is the properties were all included because they're all part of the frontage. So when you're driving down the street, there's continuity. Is that what I mean?
Yeah, my vote would be to keep that
Okay.
as part of it. I don't know what you guys think. Okay, go ahead. And this actually, I think this one's up in LA, was auto service bays, and they converted it into a fitness center. And they just leave all the doors open. But really not that much on the architecture. I think the doors, they may have took out, or maybe the metal screens, and they just put those canopies. up there. I don't know if fitness centers are even allowed in that zone. But anyway, I think it's a good solution. And you can see what's going on. I mean, it's kind of like that gym right on El Camino Real.
We have gyms right along in Los Molinos.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Here's our vertical landscape. I mean, the whole wall is green, and I'm not sure about that canopy, but it's super cool. I don't know what's in there. There's like some drum, you know, some oil drum or something, but I think it works. And the landscape softens it. And I like the blade signs, you know, that you can see. But all the signs are very different, but they're well done. Okay, go ahead.
There's a pennies.
Lucky Penny. So that's that same building. All the penny tiles. This one I love because it's a composition that includes brick, old brick, concrete. We've got a metal clad door.
There's a concrete one in your house.
And then just a container with landscape. That's a wonderful composition. Same thing here, all the vertical landscape. Just a little, I think that's a little seat ball or something at the base.
Looks like a sign.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's a sign. But then just a punched opening in the side of the wall there. And the landscape even gets up on the roof, as you can tell. And of course, I love the corrugated metal feature, which I assume screens some mechanical equipment.
Yeah.
That might be the last one. Is there any other one?
Yeah, that's the last one.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very
I think
much.
that's
for
kind of
giving
the
us
direction,
those, yeah.
No, I get right on.
We're thinking, and it doesn't have to be all inclusive, and it can be something that can be added to it all anytime.
Yeah,
Because I think you can do
it.
it as an attachment.
It could be an attachment. I think that I would kind of do both. I would have some images within the body of the document, and then the attachment.
Kind
It
of
could,
like the Lenny
refer-
guidelines, we refer outside of the basic
Yeah.
requirements to the document that has the yays and nays. And if you did something like that, you wouldn't have to have it solved day one. And we need this to get our LCP, right?
Yeah,
So that's something we
Yeah.
gotta remember.
we need to keep
We
moving.
want a solution that may be flexible enough where maybe we could add something to a attachment to get.
Yeah, I'll have to think about
That wouldn't
that, yeah.
require any coastal commission review, because it's just an attachment.
I think I would imagine that like a lot of these images, we could probably have several images in the plan because I don't see it changing. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain vision but we might continue to get better examples, right? Different communities, and to your point, then we can add on to it. So it's almost like everything that we put in the plan would be part of the attachment, and then we just keep adding to it. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
You know, and then, if we could even refer to that for other examples, refer to the supplements, visual guidelines or something like that. So the key is any photos you have, please send them to me, and why you like the photos. So I'll have to. I really like that. Thank you.
Okay.
It helps me a lot.
So we're at 6:30 now. Let's see here.
So do you have the direction?
Yeah.
The specific.
We didn't really talk about the parking.
Yeah. Yeah, so the idea is just to use the same standard we put in the Pure Bowl plan, and all the businesses I've talked to are supportive of being able to get credit for on-street parking that's marked on the street. The one thing that I would ask is there any language, based on the photos we just saw, is there any language in the vision statement that I drafted that just, you would say, hey, this needs work, or You know,
What I would recommend, at least to the members here, if something comes to mind, shoot it to Chris for review, because it's something we have to live with a little bit, like you have for months, to really come up with.
Well, one thing that I just thought of, along the lines of avoiding a theme
yeah,
is maybe to contrast that with focusing on having the architecture express the function and the structure, and even the systems. And then you could sort of point to sustainability as an example, so that you're not just saying avoid something, you're saying avoid this and lean towards this. I don't know if that would be helpful. I like the vision statement. I think it's great, but that might help to focus a little bit more.
the one thing that I'm seeing here that I'm questioning a little bit based on these photos is, instead of saying minimize ornamentation except for purposeful details, just say details, colors, public art, and other eclectic flourishes. Just take out the minimize ornamentation except purposeful details, just so it's not limited.
There was ornament for the sake of ornament, you could say.
Yeah,
It
it could be
focus on
purposeful.
forms and shapes rather than ornamentation to make it work.
Ornamentation that adds interest to the building, or something like that. So that's one text that I'm questioning, and then
Do you have something that says mix of textures?
no,
I think
but
that's
I saw that. Yeah.
yeah. Instead of using colors, for instance,
Yeah.
I mean, paint can be used effectively, but consider using more textures and more solids and voids. I mean, that's architecture 101, but still, I mean,
Yeah.
it can be pointed out that way.
Yeah, so something else that I heard in my meetings, like in particular, Jared was commenting, well, what if I want to have a purple building? Or the rainbow building idea. And so before, the current design guidelines say earth tones and warm light colors are preferable, and I took that out. And I just said colors should harmonize and provide contrast as needed to give visual relief on long walls, and then all that text is existing. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I think it sounds good.
Okay. All right, well, if you have any other ideas, like how to improve this, please send them to me, because I need to get it to the planning commission as soon as I can, so.
So
Thank you.
just procedurally, what is the intended schedule for this project moving forward?
The intent is a public review draft in May and June. It's probably more like June. Yeah.
So the public review draft, there'll be some public meetings, and can you make sure that the commission is all noticed on when those are, so everybody's aware of them, before it goes to the...
Yeah, it'll be on the TFA, the tentative future agenda, and then at the study session I mentioned, May or June was the timeline.
Okay.
But yeah, the idea is it might take more than one planning commission meeting. So we're understanding of that, but we're trying to have a target of when to start the planning commission.
And do focus on the fact that this is something that is necessary for our LCP and
Yeah,
the specific limits of what we're really trying to accomplish. We can get bolder and grandiose in other areas and whatnot
Yeah.
in the future, but this has got to be done.
it's got to be done, and then like all plans, it could change again, right? I mean, the LCP, we're just trying to get something submitted to the Coastal Commission. That doesn't mean it's the end,
No.
And then we're going
No,
to take
no.
a year to get back for them to get back to us. So
But
We need to
there's
get
a
it-
good opportunity here for a lot of public input
yeah,
before it gets to the city council,
yes,
who makes the decision. Ultimately, it's their
Yep.
direction.
yeah.
So if anybody from the public would like to, I don't know if anybody has Mr. Wright's contact information, but just touch base with him after the meeting, and we'll make sure that you're on the informational list.
Yeah, we
when
appreciate
things are coming up.
You guys sticking around
Yeah.
so we
It's important
can
stuff.
utilize your guys' expertise too, so.
Well, I think guys in the
That's
middle of
great.
this project like to know which area the area is gonna go, which is, makes you feel, give you a little bit better, you're investing a lot in there, and you're getting a warm, fuzzy feeling, we're not just going colonial here, you know?
Yeah.
That's started.
We found our material. Of Chris?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
go right ahead.
just some of my comments on kind of everything. Love the flexibility. I think the landscaping requirements are too much, given what's mostly existing out there. If someone comes in to try and change and they want to say you've got to hit 10 or 20% landscaping, but they're already so crammed for parking and space and everything. So I think we need to try and work on some flexibility there.
That's a good point. I think it should be the impact of the landscape that goes in versus some percentage
Right.
of site area or,
Yeah, you could have 20% turf and,
yeah.
And we also have to think about bioswales and handling of the runoff and whatnot, so we can't hardscape this whole thing without addressing those issues.
well, maybe there could be a difference between new builds and
It
existing.
is. So we
Depends
wouldn't
on the
require
amount
the
of change.
10%
Yeah.
for a remodel.
Say that again?
We don't require the percentage for a remodel. We
Okay.
just say you need to do what you can to add landscaping.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good. Yeah, having a hard number in there can be difficult to achieve.
Maybe I could add some text in there to make that clear. The intent is, do what you can, if it's a remodel. I can add it like a sentence. in
We
there.
don't want a concrete jungle, but yeah, I mean, all of his pictures, they weren't landscape heavy. They had some specimen pieces and,
But they're all part of the composition.
yes,
So I think that's the key. It's not, because I've seen projects where they'll put some big park area in the back where nobody sees it just to meet the 10%,
Yeah.
But we want the landscape to be incorporated into the design.
What I keep going back to is the Los Molinos Drive, you're gonna drive through, that's what most of the retail people are gonna walk into is on that street. You turn down Cali Valley and you're looking at a storage yards for equipment. Nobody's gonna be, so I think that's where you're kind of like you come off Pico and you drive down this and you see the landscaping along Los Molinos, but you turn down Rincon and there's Rincon Truck Center and metal buildings and you're not going there to look at the landscaping, you're going to get your RV fixed or there are ready-mix trucks coming out. It isn't, I think that's the gateway in a way to
That's
that.
the hard thing about being a planner, you don't know if those uses will always be there.
Right.
You gotta plan ahead.
And I guess it could change, but I'm saying.
For new tenants.
And that's with the zoning the way it is, it's more than likely going to stay that way for a long time.
Okay, very
a
good.
couple of comments on the industrial. Do we want to call it, I mean, I know we're thinking of names and stuff, but like classic industrial, we don't want modern tilt-ups and stuff. Right?
Yeah, here. I just left it open, kind of more. But I hear you.
But what do you guys think?
Well, I think it's
Not the
all
name.
basically the form base and the look of it. I mean, a tilt-up, if it's done right, could fit in there quite nicely. If it had the exposed concrete weeping edges and a textured whatever and the right doors and penetrations,
Right.
that it could be done. So I don't know if we want to limit ourselves.
No, but we don't want it to look like a traditional Ontario.
Oh, no. We've got business parks and all for
Right.
that.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna be a problem, but.
Do we need to put in like a street profile from engineering department to talk about these street, like sidewalk locations and things?
I can ask them if they want that in there, but
Their regulations are in a different title of the code, and to duplicate this, basically the same information, which a lot of it's not, it's based on guidelines that are provided in another title.
Okay.
I think maybe another approach might be to just maybe the city can put together on like a planning webpage information that addresses that. only because I don't really want to take something coastal that's going to be included in a zoning
Okay, Makes
section
sense.
of the code and have them weigh in on
okay.
that.
And last question, on the, is it easy to pull up those maps that you had of, like these ones?
Yeah, which one?
Anyone like that, yeah, that was great, that was great. So, we added those lots, front in Camino Real,
Oh, sorry.
the yellow
Yeah.
ones, right?
No, these are already in the plan.
Oh, okay.
These are in there. I mean,
Okay.
if it were up to me, I would, I don't know.
But I was gonna say, why do we have those ones, but then the ones to the left aren't, like, it seems
Yeah,
inconsistent.
I hear you. Yeah, it's just, they were already in there.
Okay,
And this is a mixed use zone here along El Camino. So I try to leave that alone.
okay, fine.
But yeah, I hear you totally on that. Just for some reason, these were included already in the plan.
Okay, that's it for me.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
very good. Great discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
And not going to be the last.
No, not the last.
And if any thoughts come to anybody's mind, Chris Wright is the head of this effort, so he's available.
Send me your photos.
Yeah,
We have your email address.
we know
ended up at those.
we know where to find you.
I sent them to Meredith.
Yeah, Meredith.
So-
Or you, yeah. Send it to me.
Okay, we have one
all
second
goes
item.
to the right
Thank you
place.
very much.
Everybody.
And, good luck on this project and future projects.
Yeah, I've got a couple projects today. I love the images that are up there. We've got a project that we're working on that I'd love to get some advice on too. That falls right in that. So,
Wait,
and
hold on,
it's not in San Clemente. Yeah.
It's not in San Clemente? I can
No.
help you.
That's
Okay.
great. Thank you, guys.
Item B
Thank
on
you.
new
Thank you.
business.
And we'll chat about that.
Um,
Totally appreciate
Adam,
it. That's
establishment,
very good.
establish
Thank you.
the meeting
Guys.
time for
Take
regular
care.
meetings with the new subcommittee.
Thank you, Chair Crandall. It is 6:46 p.m. It is 6:46 p.m. I recommend that we move the meeting to start at 3 p.m. That's the end of my presentation, but I'm available for any questions.
I think that's our
Are you
record.
hungry? Is that what you're saying?
I'm glad we have plenty of work to do, because that means we'll be getting lots of work now that staff levels are coming back up again to get things to planning commission.
Yes, that is
And,
accurate.
Excellent. So do either of you have comments on item B on new business?
I recommend approval
Oh, okay.
as a,
It's adoption of a resolution.
that we adopt a resolution moving the start time of DRSC to 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Or Pacific Daylight Time, depending on the month.
If Congress gets its way, it'll be permanent.
Okay,
Which
do we have a
would be
second?
wonderful.
I'll second it. So take a vote,
Aye.
Aye.
and aye, so unanimous. And we have, back to the agenda here. So the next meeting will be, okay, you've already corrected it, good, at 3 p.m. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
I
Got a
move we
motion
adjourn.
that we adjourn. Here we read on this.
I'll
The
second.
next adjourned regular meeting of the Design Review Subcommittee will be held Wednesday, April 13th, 3 p.m. in the Community Room, 910 A Negotiation, San Clemente, California.
You have a second?
Second.
Second by McCann, motion by Camp, McCann? Vote?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
And aye, unanimous.
All right.
So we'll see you on the